Every city you burn, I'm gonna build one high.
Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashrothi, the voice of New Eden, and it is June 27th, YC127. This is the Eve Universe Show. Welcome, guys. How's it going? We are here back on the frontier because Eve Frontiers is having its free week or whatever, like 10 days. I don't even know how many days. It is free from today, the 27th, all the way to the 7th of next month. So an opportunity for everybody to come and check out Eve Frontiers. Eve Frontiers is, of course, CCP's newest development. This is the one that is backed up by the blockchain, which, of course, we will almost certainly be talking about. Is it a crypto scam? No. Is it Eve 2.0? Maybe. We'll find out. It is definitely a much more hardcore game. But this is the very first free time for Eve Frontiers since the NDA was lifted. We did look at the Eve Frontiers with this new cycle. Basically, every so often as they're doing the development of Frontiers, they kind of wipe everything and they come out with new version of it. They call it a new cycle. This is all related to the fact that the universe itself is these three black holes that are kind of orbiting each other, and the idea is that everything kind of destroys itself and recreates itself every so often, which are known as cycles. And so, you know, in that same sort of way, they call each wipe cycles. I think this is cycle 5. Pretty sure it's cycle 5. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. But like I said, this is the very first cycle where the NDA has been lifted. So we will be showing that off again. And now, as of today, everybody can come and check it out for free. If you are interested in the game, though, if any of this ever interests you, you can become a founder, which will cost you $40 or more, depending on which pack you get. And that gives you early access to this game and access to the founders-only areas of the Discord, where the CCP has been very active in working with the founders, getting their feedback, talking with them and whatnot. It's actually been a pretty cool collaborative effort. That said, I am not here to necessarily sell you on the product. Nobody's paid me anything to talk to you about it. I just, we cover EVE Online stuff, and I know that a lot of you have been at least interested in this stuff, and so, that's the reason why I'm bringing it to you. I want to talk about the good, the bad, what I do like, what I don't like, all without any sort of constraint, because I work for you guys, not for CCP, which is a big advantage. However, if you are interested in this game, if you do want to pick up the Frontier Access or Founders Access, I do request that you use my link down below. They give us extra points, and a couple days ago I was actually in third place, but now iBeast has taken over my position. So if more people use my links, then I get to be on the leaderboard, which makes me feel warm and fuzzy. But that said, we also do have some Eve news to talk about today. We've got a New Eden news, we've got a new scope video, and a couple other things to talk about, but I figure that we will talk about the Frontier stuff first, and we'll do the Eve stuff later, or perhaps another time if it comes to that. I'm not 100% sure yet. But before we jump into Eve Frontiers, the actual gameplay itself, I do want to talk about some patch notes. These are what's changed since the last time that we talked about it. Hold on a second. Yep. So, sorry, a little bit of coffee on my spoon. Let's pull up the patch notes. Okay, so this is actually the news about the Remnant Access, which is what's happening right now. So from the 27th of June to the 7th of July, Frontier will be open to everyone. Now, this is something, if you don't pick it up now, or you don't, it's 10 days, there you go. If you come in, if you don't like it, if you don't feel like playing it yet, that's perfectly fine. basically what they have been doing the last few cycles, last 2 or 3 cycles, is once a cycle, they've been doing this. Like, so when the cycle first starts out, all the people with founder access are able to get in, obviously. And then a couple weeks later, they seem to open it up for this free time period. Now, one thing to note is that this game is an open universe sandbox in a way that even EVE Online can't claim. There is no such thing as high security space. In a lot of ways, it's mechanically very similar to EVE, but like I said, it is 100% a hardcore survival space colonization game, as opposed to EVE Online, which is more about like living in this relatively already established space. Sure, there's like wormholes and nullsec and all that stuff, but in a lot of ways, EVE Online is kind of dominated by Concord and the empires and the rules that they create, whereas EVE Frontiers has very little, if no, established governance, with the expectations that players themselves will create their own governance. And one of the major themes of EVE Frontiers is this idea of the dark forest, this idea of like a lack of information that kind of EVE Online has sort of become beholden to. You know, we've got kill boards, we've got directional scan, we got local, we've got all these different tools that lets us know what's going on in EVE Online, and helps us stay safe against other players. In Frontiers, none of that exists. You have no local, you have no overview, you have no Z kill. Well, actually, no, there is a kill board, but you know, there's very little information at your disposal. You are just kind of out there in the edge of space, making it on your own or forming your own little tribe. Everybody can attack anybody. And so it's this interesting little cat and mouse game, which is why I think that it's important to keep that in mind, because, you know, as a person that's coming and playing as a free player right now, realize that there are going to be more established people who've been playing this cycle for the last couple of weeks. So, including myself, although I will admit that I haven't been playing that much, so I'm going to show off kind of where I'm at. I would say that the progress that I've made is probably something that could be done within a day or two. So I'm going to show you guys kind of where I'm at, what I'm thinking about, show you kind of how to take your first steps into the game, some advice that I might have, and then what I want to do is go out for some exploration and see where we can go, because one of the things I've heard, you know, this cycle is by far the most challenging cycle that we have seen so far. Now, one of the things that's really nice about this is that in previous cycles, it was still very much beholden on the stations, the NPC stations that exist, and kind of like that is your home base, and you had limited ability. You could build your own like area, but like most construction and stuff was still done in the keeps and other NPC structures. This is now the opposite. There's no manufacturing in the keeps whatsoever. Basically, everything that you're doing is needing to be done in space. Now, one of the things is this is obviously a very early access development. And so one of the things that's missing in this cycle, and one of the reasons I'm going to be, again, I'm not sugarcoating anything. I'm going to tell you guys what I think, good, bad, and ugly. One of the things I do not like about this cycle is the fact that you can build your base, but you can't share the base with anybody. Like, you can have a tribe, which is their version of a corporation, but you can't, like, invite your friends and build a base together. You could theoretically have multiple people occupy the same system and develop your own bases at your own what's called Lagrange points, which are these like basically the points that you can build your bases. But you can't share your facilities with your allies. Now, that is not a design choice from my understanding. That is a matter of kind of where we're at in the game right now. So I will warn everybody, like, even you can get into Founders Access, and it's got a lot of stuff to check out and things to build up and develop, but it is very, very much in early access. So at least for us, we kind of dinked around with it, but I feel like we kind of got a little bit to the edge of where we were willing to go, because it's obvious that, like, at a certain point, you really want to do cooperative work, but the tools aren't quite there for cooperative work. So let's take today as an opportunity to kind of see this as a curiosity and get a check-in to see where this game is going, because it does have a lot of potential. I don't know if this is going to become EVE 2.0 or whatever, but it is a very interesting take on the EVE Online concept. It very much like takes the dream of what EVE Online is, quote unquote, supposed to be, this hardcore space sandbox survival MMO, you know, and really pushes that to its limits. So it's very much interesting for that regards. But one of the things that we do want to talk about is the patch notes, because there are some interesting things in here. First of all, okay, so updated the carbon ore distribution in the universe, making access to it for more reliable to travel in the frontier. Do I want a company in the game? I mean, you're welcome to. I don't know. Like I said, I'm just probably going to do some exploration and poking around and stuff. I love the EVE Frontier because of the focus on the lack of given information, which is very JSpace or Pochvin. Yes, it is very much what they call the dark forest, where, you know, you're given very limited amount of information. One of the things I do like is that often, like, I'll go to a belt or whatever for mining, and somebody else will show up, and there's this moment of tension where it's like, okay, well, is this guy going to try to come after me? Am I going to come after him? You know, I've had one guy who started, like, coming towards me, and you know what? Like, sorry, man, you get within 15 kilometers of me, I'm shooting, right? Like, I don't have the, I can't just expect, is this game completed? Not even close. It is playable, but this is, again, very early access. So as far as this first patch note goes, one of the things that we'll talk about is various resources that you're going to want to look for. In the game, you start out in just a system, and you have to build your first ship and all of the resources and whatnot. And at least at first, if you go back and watch the original video, like, there's a lot of challenge in finding a system that actually has all the resources that you need. They've definitely done a lot to fix that. Although, that being said, if you are coming and playing the game, one of my first recommendations to you is that you're going to want to look at the solar system that you start in and make a decision about whether or not this solar system is going to have what you want. And if it doesn't, you just self-destruct and try again, right? Because, you know, when you first start out, you have nothing. That means you also have nothing to lose. But the biggest thing, the biggest resource of all of the resources in this game is going to be carbon-rich asteroids. Carbon-rich asteroids not only gives you a lot of the stuff that's needed to build the stuff that you're going to want to build, but also, and this is what's critical, it gives you fuel. In EVE Frontiers, everything takes fuel, from warping to activating your modules, or rather, you know, recharging your capacitor, to jumping. There are very few stargates in this game, but every ship, or almost every ship, is fit with its own jump drive, which must be fueled. So as you're doing this exploration, you have to continually find new sources of fuel, which that was actually one of the earlier problems, where systems would just not have any carbon in it. And if you weren't careful, you could jump into a system and then not have the capacity to produce new fuel, and therefore not be able to jump again, and would have to just self-destruct and try again, right? This patch note tries to fix that. There are gates, Justin. There are gates. In fact, here, we can even look at it real quick. But what we'll see is, this is how big the solar system is. You can see, like, all of the... Hold on, let me pick a... planets? Yeah, here we go. So just, you know, this is just... I mean, obviously it looks like noise, but, like, you can see the different systems in the game. there are thousands of systems in this game, which is really important because, again, like, there's no such thing as high sec. So let's see, actual color. Yeah. So there are lots and lots and lots. Every single dot is a solar system in this game. Now, if we go to here, we can see that there are some of these systems are connected. There are some lines. Like, for instance, if we come here, we can see that these systems are connected. So there are some stargates, but they are few and far between and only kind of collect together small clusters of stuff. So there are connected systems, there are less connected systems. That's something to keep in mind. You, as you start out without being able to, in a system that is not connected, okay? And you do not have like a home station like you did in other areas, which is why, like, if you self-destruct at first, you're going to just spawn in another solar system within your starting region. Now, you can build, we'll skip ahead a little bit, you can build one of these things, which is a network node. So now, if I die, I'm going to respawn right here. This is my home, right? Network nodes do have to be fueled, but that fuel is to run the services of the network node, which are other structures that you can build, right? So I've got, you know, oop, can I do this? No, I can't. So I've got my printer, I've got a refinery, I've got a storage unit, and I've got an assembler, and I've got a turret. And so all of these are going to be taking fuel. I've heard someone say that systems with gates have better resources. I don't necessarily think that that's true. I think that it's more of a coincidence, Malin, because the places that seem to have interesting resources. Now, there's different resources in different places, but like if you see this area that's here, so there are ancient civilizations, right? Extinct civilizations. And so this shows those different civilizations. You know, we've got the reds and the greens. Yes, it is Eve with base building. Right. It is Eve plus Rust, basically. So, you know, these areas that are kind of in the ruins of one of the ancient civilizations will both have really interesting resources because you can pick it out from the ruins of those extinct civilizations, and also will be connected via stargates a lot more. So, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there could be better resources, like some of the rarer resources, especially things like rifts and stuff, which are critical to fuel later on, that are outside of these kind of established zones, right? So either way, we have made it through one patch note so far. Let's keep going. Added cycle hub. You can now view the cycle missions accessible through the Keeper. I don't know what that means. Added a new jump range star map filter that colors stars based on your ship's current jump capability. This is great. So one of the things that they added in with this cycle is this concept of heat, right? So if I come back here into the game, you can see down here, I have heat. And if I warp around, if I warp closer to the star, if we pick a place that's closer to the star, like this convoy debris. So here's tip number one. If you're just starting out in the game, or even whatever, if you find convoy debris in your system, it is worth checking those out. You know, the asteroids, this is very much a mining game. This is very much a mining game, but the convoy debris is going to be a really great way for you to get resources without having to spend a whole bunch of time mining. But what we'll see is, as I get closer to the star, you're going to see my heat start to increase. Heat makes things cost more, and at a certain point can start to shut down your systems if you are if your heat is too high. You also can't jump when you're when you're overheated, All right. So here you go. You can see that there's all these different wrecks. And so unlike mining, where you have to sit there and wait, all you have to do is kind of go around and pick up the loot. Great. Salvage materials are great. Even corpses are great. We're going to look at the why corpses are good in a little bit. But also, if you guys have been paying attention to earlier, you'll see that the wreck symbol actually disappears now once you loot it, which is kind of handy. So we're just going to quickly come and scour this area. It respawns about once an hour, I think it is. Somebody might be able to correct me on that. But this is a great way to get stuff. Is there a ship tree? I don't remember if there's a ship tree per se, but hey, what's up, Smile for the Internet? We can look at some of the ships that are available right now. Although they have basically made it so that only like cruisers and below are available right now. So that should be about it. So if you scroll wheel out, you can get kind of this tactical map which sees what's in that, and if you continue to scroll out, you can see like the whole system. But I am going to go to my assets and warp back to my base with all of this precious loot. And you can see that my overheated status. So right now I wouldn't be able to jump because I'm overheated. So I gotta get out of here. So now I'm critically overheated, which means that, like, I wouldn't even be able to recharge my capacitor right now. That's a bad, obviously a pretty bad thing. There are tools to let you cool down, but heat is a major consideration in the game right now. I will say that it seems to be a bug where the heat doesn't dissipate correctly sometimes. If you do see that happening, what you'll see is that you'll just stay overheated and your fuel will continue to burn even after you've like landed in your base like this. What you can do there is just log out and log back in, and you'll see the real version of the heat. So any rate, the point that I'm trying to get to is if we open up the map, it used to be that you would see this sphere. You'll see this sphere around your ship that shows you what your jump range is. But the problem is that was a relic of a bygone cycle, because heat, like, it used to be that fuel was your only consideration for how far you could jump, right? The more fuel in your fuel bay, the further you can jump. But now there's actually a consideration of heat as well, which becomes by far, especially with this exploration ship, the bigger consideration. So now instead of a big sphere, you can see kind of the systems around you. So I can see like, okay, well, I can jump. I should be able to jump to these systems, but these other systems are... No, yeah, I can jump to this system, and that would be fine. But some of these other systems, I would be able to jump with the amount of fuel I have, but I can't because of the amount of heat it would generate, okay? So being able to find systems that are close enough and then cooling off and then making another jump is a big piece of actually being able to travel nowadays. Now, what that does mean, though, is that you can get around, you can make more jumps without having to refuel, right? Because you're not going to consume all of your fuel bay in a single jump. So I'm going to grab all of these, I'm going to grab all the salvage materials, and I'm going to grab these mummified corpses out of my storage unit. And then I'm going to go to this refinery. And I'm going to drop the salvage materials in here. Now, these three things here, this is like basically tier 2, like your second step construction materials, right? Like your first step is obviously you mine the stuff, like you've got metal rich ore or whatever. Hold on a second. Like you've got metal-rich ore, and you've got precious metals, silicates, heavy metals, carbonous materials, water. These are like your primary building blocks. If I look in my building tools for the kind of structures I can build, you'll see the very first things that you can build are all going to take just ore or those materials, right? So you've got the refuge takes some metal-rich ore. You've got the portable refinery takes common ore. Portable printer takes carbonous ore. Portable printer is carbonous ore. The network node. So the network node is the one that starts taking the more advanced materials. So you've got thermal composites, carbon weave, and printed circuits. Portable storage takes 50 common ore. So you can drop these portable devices, the refuge, the portable refinery, portable printer, and portable storage for relatively cheap, but they are, these will only last for, I think, 3 days, and then they just disappear with everything inside of them. In order to have things last for longer than 3 days, you're going to have a network node and start building a base. Yeah, you're right. First is ore, then refined, then the beakers. But then if we go to the industry, so we start looking at the actual things that you can build, you start to see like, okay, these alloys and printed circuits and everything are going to be kind of the next thing for the smallest version of everything. And then above that is going to be these building foam, right? Which is kind of where I'm at right now. So building foam. So we can see here, printed circuits takes the basic materials, carbonous and silicates. Carbon weave is carbonous materials. Thermal composites is carbonous materials, silicates, and some feldspar, which is another one of those refinables from the other thing. And the other one has to be built in a portable, but that's fine. We'll look at that in a little bit. But the point is that if we go to this refinery, nope, that's not it. If we go to the refinery, we can see that those armor plates that, remember, I just picked up for free, the salvage materials. It will give me all 3 of those manufacturing pieces. So we're going to hit max, which now they have a little max button, which is great. I love it. And then hit start, and that's just going to start reprocessing this to give me those materials. Yep, it's feldspar. That's the real stuff. You know that, right? Like, feldspar is a real material. You know how I learned that? Outer Wilds. All the characters' names in Outer Wilds are all named after different rocks. I feel like you should be able to jump overheated. It would cause damage to your ships or modules as long as you're not critical. I mean, yeah, overheating is a relatively new mechanic. Yeah. Veldspar with a V, I don't think that's real. I think that the CCP made up Veldspar, but it's based off of feldspar, which is the actual material. Anywho. So, and I can take the excess of that. Pyrite is real too. Yeah, well, a lot of the stuff is real. And then mummified clones gives us cell weave, shalagidit. I don't even know what this is for. Oh, it's for ship engines. And then water. Water is a big deal because water is used to make fuel. Okay? Which is the other thing that kind of comes from carbon. And again, fuel is king in this game. Everything takes fuel. You actually saw me, if you paid attention, I quickly refueled a little bit before, as we were warping away. You can see my fuel bay there. I'm going to grab this stuff and put it back in here. And then grab some fuel. Yep, there's a shortage of fool's gold. Not a shortage of fools, rather. So, yeah, you just drop your fuel into the fuel bay, and now it's full. And I can go here and check out. Now you can see, like, there's a lot more. Now that I've cooled off, there's a lot more systems that I can jump to before I overheat. And there are some systems that I would be able to jump to, but I can't because of heat. Now, one thing that is worth noting is that if you come into a system, you can... Really? I thought you could... Oh, yeah, okay. Like, this system here has only one planet. So this system I'd be very nervous about jumping to. Because if this planet is too close to the sun, it becomes very hard to jump out of this system. It can be a trap, right? This is a hardcore game. You can, especially since it's still in early access, especially since they're still building it, it is very, very easy to get yourself soft locked in this game. Water is the first tier of fuel, right? Better engines require better fuel, which requires you to find rifts and have special lenses that allow you to mine those rifts. So that's like the big, that's the oil in the game, right? That's the big resource that everybody's kind of hunting after. So either way, when you're looking at a system, oh, let's go back to the patch notes. I keep getting ahead of myself. We've made it 2 patch notes in, or 3. All right, the assemblies in build mode has been correctly sorted by type and size. Assembly names have been updated for consistency. When dismantling assembly, there's now a confirmation step. Portable storage can now be interacted with from the same distance as other assemblies, i.e. 5 kilometers. Portable storages can now be selected as the active inventory in assemblies, allowing them to be delivered to, allowing items to be delivered to them. This is a big help. One of the problems that people were running into is you could build something that you couldn't actually put in your cargo hold. So you would build it, and then you wouldn't be able to pull it out. The only way to get it was to then disassemble the printer, and then it would drop it in a can, and then you could move it from the can to your portable storage, and then rebuild the printer. So this makes it so you don't run into that problem anymore, where you accidentally build something that you can't actually put into your cargo hold. Portable storage can now be selected as the active inventory in assemblies, allowing items to be delivered to them. Wait, that's what I just read. Change temperature at which you start to overheat from 70 to 90. Very good. Assembly window will automatically close when out of range. Energy consumption rate has been added to build mode info cards. Yes, Noisy, they fixed it. Optimized asset collision accuracy to improve server performance. Mining lenses now state the valid target group instead of an error. Fix an issue where dismantling or destroying a hangar failed to drop stored ships into space if assembled or into containers if packaged. Resolved UI sluggishness after printer and refinery delivery. That's nice. That is actually one of the biggest complaints that people were having, especially with the stuff that's like, quote unquote, on the chain. There's a certain amount of lag when interacting with those, but we even saw, like, as I was doing the reprocessing, I was able to grab stuff out, and it was pretty responsive. It used to be that it would take like 2 or 3 seconds to do those kinds of actions, so that's been made a lot better. Resolved an issue where mouse input interfered with printer and refinery progress bars. I have no idea what that meant, or like what that problem was. Resolved an issue when delivering ships to hangars that were too small for them once assembled. Okay, great. So, you know, just as you can tell by people in chat, doesn't seem like much, maybe if you haven't played this game, but these are pretty important changes for those of us who have been playing a little bit. So, let's jump into the game. So, as we've kind of hinted at, there are 3 major materials that are going to be necessary for progress. You've got common ore, metal-rich ore, and carbonous ore. These are going to be useful for 2 major reasons. One, if we go into the build menu, we can see once again, so our major, like your very first things that you need is you're going to need a portable refinery in order to get to like the next step of stuff to refine ore to get cool stuff out of it. You're going to need a portable printer in order to build your first stuff, and a portable storage so that way you can have more than just what's in your cargo hold. And each of these take ore. So the portable storage is common ore. The portable printer is carbonous ore, and the portable refinery is common ore. So I'm going to need, for a full setup of all 3, I would need 100 common ore and 50 carbonous ore. The other one is the refuge. So the refuge is going to be important for when you're building ships, right? This is where you can put in ships, and also it helps you do your fitting stuff. And this is going to be metal-rich ore. Okay? And then your first real step past the tutorial, where they want you to build. So if we... Let's just go ahead and grab... I don't have enough carbonous ore. Okay. Isn't that... Story of my life. All right, we're going to go find some carbonous ore. So you're going to want all three of those ore types. So when you're looking at your system, you're going to be looking for 3 different resources. If you can see here, we want an asteroid cluster. That's going to be your common ore. A ferrous cluster. That's going to be your metal-rich ore. And then, uh-oh. Do I not have carbon right now? That would suck. Huh. Well, this is a good example. Do you want me to bring you some? I mean, if you want to. But so, like, if I was in this system and I was just starting out, I would probably self-destruct just to be able to try something else. Now, granted, I think that likelihood is that it's just about to respawn, because they have made it so that the sites respawn a lot better. Hmm. In the meantime, let's go ahead and check out this ferrous cluster. I have so much fuel. Also, my mining lens is low. So here we see that there's a bunch of rats mining this asteroid. And of course, you actually can kill these rats to get some ore too, but they will largely ignore you. Yeah. Mining lenses are just silicates, which is common ore. But I'm going to start mining some of this metal-rich ore. It's just like Eve. It's very simple. Now, one thing to bear in mind is that this game does have line of sight and line of effect, or rather, line of effect. So, you know, at any given time, somebody could just warp in here and start attacking me. So to kind of protect myself, I'm actually going to go to the back side of this asteroid. So that way, even if somebody shows up, they will have to come around to come and get me. And that's a way to protect myself. Otherwise, you can see my cargo hold starting to fill up with metal-rich. Now, if I attack these drones, what'll happen is when I attack one, 2 of them total will attack. So I can go here and I can start attacking this guy. And you'll see that he'll turn yellow, and at least one other will turn yellow too. Or at least that's what was happening. Ah, there it is. So this one's also turning yellow. What does that sound? So as you can see, mechanically, it's very similar to EVE Online. It uses the same kind of turret mechanics. You will need to kill rogue drones in order to get the parts, so that way you can build your first ship. And remember that, so like your mining laser actually can do damage too. I can shoot at him with my mining laser, and look, it killed him even faster. So you can shoot with a mining laser. You do not need the autocannon in order to do it. The autocannon just is better at hitting targets. And off we go. So this is a big reason why cargo holds are really a big usefulness. You know, the bigger your cargo hold, the more you can carry. So in my fit, you'll see that like the one low slot I have is a cargo grid extension. So that way I can hold 990 M3 instead of like 400, I think, which the Corvette that you start with is even smaller. So that's a big advantage for how you can mine. But also, once we get the carbon, like we'll check out what we can do to mine more efficiently. I need more carbon ore. Let's see if there's any carbon now. Has there been a new carbon that spawned? Uh-oh. No. No, it's fine. I'm actually probably going to jump. I'm going to cool off a little bit and see, and then we'll jump and see whether or not we can get something useful to us. We've got 1,200 fuel, and we've got 1,600 fuel in our cargo bay. So we're going to cool off for a second, and then we're going to check out one of the systems nearby to see if we can get something. We do want to get some more mining crystals, though. So that's silicates. Printer. We're going to build 10 of them. So this is going to take 5 minutes. If there's any questions or anything like that, let me know. I'll be happy to answer if I can. But yeah, we definitely need to get some carbon before, or a source of carbon. Not just Malin. All right, let's go ahead and check out another system real quick. So, let's see. 3 records found. Can I... Where's the solar... There we go. Are these really both only have one planet? Let's let it cool all the way off. Oh, I do have some hull damage. So I don't have any armor or shields because I don't have either of those fit because I have a cargo extender instead. So it's a balancing act. And this is the second ship you can build, by the way. This is the ship that you're supposed to build after your initial ship. Why is this so... Come on. There we go. So, okay, this is great. So this system has a bunch more of extra planets. So we're going to jump to this this system here. It's going to cost us 640 fuel. So we've got plenty of fuel to jump there and jump back. So, ready? And it's just this simple. This right now is a free trial. You can play until the 7th of next month. So for the next 10 days, you can play this game for free. All right, so now I'm in a new system. Let's see what we can find. Nothing there. Nothing there. Asteroid cluster, convoy debris, installation wreckage. Uh-oh. Communication module debris. That's interesting. Carbon field. This is what we're looking for. A carbon field. Now, there's some other asteroids and stuff, like this natural asteroid cluster. As a newer player, that's going to be completely useless to you. There's a couple of other sites that are going to be useless to you, too. You're looking for asteroid cluster, metal-rich asteroids, or ferrous cluster, rather, and carbon field. So we're going to go to the carbon field and hope we don't die. I'm going to put the fuel in there so that way I have more cargo space. I didn't even grab the mining crystal. Fuck. Well, luckily I should be able to mine this out without having to... Okay, so you can see here that somebody has a portable refinery and a portable storage here. So there is players here. In fact, there's the player right there. Let's hope that I don't die. He's in a reflex. Let's see if he tries to shoot me. We're in the same kind of ship right now. But I'm burning away from him. So right now, like, neither of us know if the other person is friendly or not. This is another player. We don't know. It could go either way. But I know that our maximum range is like 15 kilometers. So I'm just trying to burn away from him, and he's burning away from me. And I can open up a conversation with him if I want to. Hey, I'm on stream. I'm not here to hurt you. What is the intention of this game? It is a space colonization game. He says hi, so hopefully he's friendly. We're just going to mine some carbon. He says all good. So I'm going to keep my space. He's going to keep his space. We're going to try to stay friendly with each other. So the cool thing is, since he has this... Oh my god, never mind. I guess that rock's dead. Since we both have... Or since he has this portable refinery and portable storage here, so he can just be sitting here and mining this for a while, you know? Like, one of the things I like to do is put up 3 refineries and a portable storage. So that way, as I'm mining, I'm just constantly putting them into the refineries to get the material out of them and using the portable storage to kind of store all the extra stuff. And then once all the rocks are mined out, then I grab the stuff and bring it all home. But for now, we're just going to be mining these rocks. Keeping an eye on him there. He's got his rock, I've got mine. I want to put this rock between me and him so that way we can feel safe. And this is one of the cool things, like this is an interaction that like doesn't really exist in EVE Online right now, where like I gotta deal with this guy. Oh, he just left. I don't know how safe he is. Obviously, he hasn't attacked me yet, so that's great. Maybe I've made a new friend. But he's also kind of afraid of me, right? But I can put this rock between us as a way of kind of being like, okay, well, don't come over here, and I won't be forced to kill you. I don't know what they did, but it seems the range for jump is way shorter now. Ooh. I love how it tells you that your standings have decreased, even though, like, standings aren't a thing yet in this game. Let's see what... Is my mining lens it's going to last, or is my cargo... What's going to run out first, the mining lens or the cargo? That's what I want to know. I can reload my auto cannons. You can see my capacitor recharging here, and as my capacitor recharges, it's also consuming fuel. Likewise, like my afterburner, one of the things that's interesting is that there is no like cycle time on your afterburner. You can just turn it on and off, and it just consumes extra fuel while it's running. So you have a little bit more control. Didn't you also say the jump range is determined by heat? Yes. So now I want to head back home. I don't think I can yet. So let's go ahead and find a place that's like on the outside of the solar system. We're going to warp to this Ferris cluster at range. So that way, hopefully, I can cool off. I'm trying to get back to... What is assets? What is the hotkey for assets? H. Okay. So I'm trying to get to 036 PSC. So we're just going to let this cool off for a few seconds. Thank you. One of the other cool things about this game is that the piloting is much more physics-based. So you'll see, like, if I need to turn around, I can't just start going in a different direction. You slowly turn, and you can bounce off of stuff and stuff. It's pretty cool. Yeah, this is, like, they started with the same engine as EVE Online, but they've built a much more, like, space survival colonization game, as opposed to an economy game that EVE Online, an economy and war game that EVE Online is. I do have stuff in a keep at this point, which is one of the structures, but, you know, there's not much to the keeps right now, given the fact that you can't build stuff in them. Oh yeah, the different I don't think I can pull up like a corp or like a structure whatever, ship browser. Where am I going? 036 PSC. Oh yeah, no, but that is the whole point, is that it's going to be player built completely. There's where I'm trying to get to. I could theoretically like jump here, and that should get me closer to there. It looks like it's closer. But now I can just jump directly. So let's go ahead and jump back. Jump back home. Oh, man. And I just land... Wait, hold on. Where did I... Wait. Oh, this is not my spot. Okay, let's get out of here. I can see the ships in the fitting window. Right. So yeah, there are... These are the basic corvettes. You start out with this ship. Right? I think this is right. This is like your rookie ship. And then there are the Recurve, the Reflex, and the Reaver corvettes. Which I'm using this one. And then for frigates, there is the half, which, you know, as you can see, like, these are not, this won't bring new players. If anything, it'll steal players from Eve. Yes and no. I mean, it does two things. It brings in a different group of people that weren't necessarily paying attention to Eve. And interestingly enough, the fact that it is a crypto game does attract a certain kind of person, right? Like, you know, there's, you know, within the crypto space, there's this kind of libertarian, ideological, you know, free from government, all, you know, like self-regulation kind of world, right? And this game really plays into that in a lot of ways, where it's harsh and it's unforgiving, but it is based on natural laws as opposed to like governmental laws, and that the players can build their own societies within that universe. And that does attract a certain amount of people. One of the things that's very interesting is that in the Eve Frontiers Discord, there's this ritual amongst the crypto bro space, where they say good morning to each other every morning, right? They say GM, right? And it's because, like, the crypto world is this like inherently social experience. And so in the Eve Frontier Discord, there is a specific channel that's just for people to say good morning to each other. And so you have these, right. It's crypto because of the fact that it uses blockchain as its backing data set. Not because it's about, you know, NFTs or anything like that. It has nothing to do with any of that kind of stuff. It uses the idea of blockchain to be your back end data set. So that way all data, or like for instance, if a player builds a player-built Stargate in the game, that Stargate is registered on the blockchain, which means that it's public-facing data. You know, in Eve, there's a lot of data that you can access via the API, where CCP has their own database, but then there's an API that people can hit in order for CCP to kind of give them some of that data. But ultimately, CCP owns that data in their database, and you know, they choose what to expose. What they're choosing to do here is that data is actually on the blockchain itself, which means anybody can just like look at that data and assemble things. So there's like tools that allow you to see where all of the player built Stargates are, for example, based on this public data. You could play both Eve and Frontier, like your multi-boxing. Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. So how long it'll take for people to charge crypto to go through the gates? There is technically, I think, an idea that there will be a cryptocurrency involved as like an intermediary, the Eve coin. It isn't part of the game at this point, but it is kind of the way that you would get those lenses that are used to get fuel, which again is required for kind of all the operation within the game. So, you know, the high-end ideal of this game, according to its white paper, is that what CCP is trying to do is establish a set of like the rules of the universe where you have a client that's open source and you have all of the rules and backing data that is available, that is on the blockchain, which means that CCP could literally cease to exist and the game would still function. Oh, see, I've got that bug where I've got critical power. Did they take the crypto back out? Well, I mean, like, if I open up my wallet, you can see that there is Eve coin. It's just not needed for anything right now. Nor do I know how to even generate it. So it's technically there. You just don't need to really worry about it unless you're and even when it comes to like deploying the structures, like theoretically speaking, this network node and the other devices on here are on the chain. But there's like an interface in between that makes it so that as a player, you don't even need to worry about it at all. Like you don't need to ever think of it as a crypto game. It doesn't feel like one as you're playing it. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't attract that kind of people, right? That there's a certain amount of people that are interested in that. And then the other type of people, like there are people that played EVE Online and quit. Not because they're not good enough or whatever, but EVE Online doesn't deliver on the promises that they wanted, you know? Wormhole Space, Potchfin, these kind of give you a little bit of an idea of like making your own space, you know, having control over your own space, true exploration and discovery. But EVE doesn't have 5,000 solar systems. Wait, actually, it does. Wait. Right? Yeah, so never mind. Like EVE doesn't have 25,000 solar systems or whatever it is that they're planning on having in Frontiers. Like this offers an like an opportunity for people to do things in this game that they wanted to do in EVE, but EVE isn't really built for. Yeah. 25,000 systems right now, 125,000 of them planned. Also, another thing that's worth noting about this game is that it's all very realistically simulated. So there's these 3 black holes. You can kind of see... you can see that there's like these kind of clusters of systems. There's these 3 black holes. And the thing is that all of these systems are actually moving around. Like in a previous iteration, you could build stargates between 2 different systems. And the next day, those stargates get shut off because the systems themselves move over time. And so if the systems drift away from each other, they can drift away outside of their maximum range and the stargate turns off. So this is a living, dynamic universe. There are certain things that this game delivers on that EVE Online just fails to. So whether or not this is going to replace EVE or whatever, I'm not sure. I don't think so. I mean, there's definitely still a place for EVE Online as well. You know, they've, in my opinion, they've left the door open to allow us to transfer our characters between the 2 different games, not resources. But they've kind of set up in the lore that there's a pretty strong hint that this is happening at the same time as EVE Online, but in a very, very different space. So theoretically speaking, since we're just an infomorph, we could clone jump to the frontier if such a bridge was built. But like that is not necessarily what they're going to do. I'm just saying like they could do that. You know, CCP said a long time ago that they would love to make a game that has more physics-based play with piloting and like line of sight and all these kinds of things, where but Hilmar said back in like 2019 that if they were ever to do that kind of thing, they would create another place that you would have to travel to where the new physics would operate, where the EVE Online as we know it would continue to operate in the old universe. And this really feels like they're kind of working to deliver on that idea. The technology is very different, but if you think about it, we're still just infomorphs. You'd probably need a TARDIS to go between the two games. Hey, wait, I think I have one of those in my hangar. Well, I mean, like I said, we're just infomorphs. We're just clones. Same as in EVE. And there is this thing called the Keeper who's kind of tracking everything. So, you know, we could work to reach out to New Eden and establish a connection between the two, at least an informational connection. But again, like that's 100% speculation. Don't think that that's necessarily where they're going with it. But okay, so now that I have some of this carbonous material, right? But if you could transfer infomorphs, you'd be able to transfer other data. What would stop you from building EVE tech in the frontiers? Well, we don't like. What would? That's a good question. I mean, there's a lot of similarities between the two. But like in the lore, it seems to suggest that the Keeper, the reason why this program has initiated where they're waking up people to colonize the frontier is because the Keeper detected Caroline Star, the Caroline Star event, because they talk about a death of a star and, you know, the various cultures and communities and stuff that he detected from that, which is on their website. Yeah, so they're definitely trying to do a different thing with the game. That's true. Yeah. Well, that's the thing is that there are some physics concepts here. There's the concepts of stillness, which is kind of like their notion of space-time. And the idea is that the triple black hole, the trinary cluster, affects the universe in some very critical ways that may interact with space-time in ways that we don't know, that could, say, disrupt pegs, for example. I mean, that's a pretty easy explanation. But, so check this out. In EVE, if I was just sitting here like this, and I started to go towards this structure here, you know, I would go straight towards it, right? Because in EVE, you're just a sphere and a vector, as I've been talking about in my tutorial videos. But here, I actually have a direction. So I'm actually facing in this direction. So if I double click here, watch what happens. I'm going to double click, and I don't go directly that way. I have to turn and go around towards the thing that I was supposed to be going towards. Like, I can even hit approach, and I still have to turn in order to get to there. And this is something that's pretty cool. And it does actually make space combat a lot more dynamic. I actually like the feeling of fighting in Frontiers more than in EVE Online. And then watch, we can bounce off of this thing too. Dink. So it very much, like, EVE Online does have space exploration, but let's be honest, space exploration in EVE is kind of gimmicky. It's more or less just the mini games and stuff. You're not feeling like you're really exploring anywhere, right? In EVE Frontiers, less than 10%, if they are planning, I think they mentioned that they would like to add collision damage. In EVE Frontiers, there is, like, even in the last cycle, people only visited like 1/10 of all of the systems in the game, and there's some weird shit out there There's some beautiful skyboxes. There's some crazy like constructions by rogue drones. There's stuff that people have not yet seen in this game. So there, I guess I keep coming back to the fact that Eve Frontiers delivers on, or at least tries to deliver on certain things that Eve Online, given how well established it is, just simply can't necessarily deliver on. Now, will that change over time? Probably, but you know, they aren't quite the same. And does it cannibalize some of the Eve Online community? Yeah, that's one of the big risks, right? That's one of the things I'm really nervous about, is that, like, I don't know whether or not this is Eve 2.0, but it definitely feels like there's a certain amount of, like, what CCP would have always wanted to do with Eve Online, but couldn't, because things are way too established in Eve. You know, like, when CCP makes little changes in the game about how things work, people freak the fuck out. Whereas in Eve Frontiers, they have a brand new slate where they can be like, this is just the way things work now, right? You know, there is no overview. There is no directional scan. Get over it, you know? And I think that offers CCP a certain amount of freedom that they like. Max Katzenford of some of the lore questions people are curious about could be answered by set exploration. Yeah, there is a lot of really interesting stuff out there about there are these ancient civilizations that you find out about, and you're piecing together. It is a free trial. You can play for the next 10 days for free. Now, one of the things that is also worth noting is, you know, anytime you have something like this, you know, Dust 514 was a good example of this, where people come and check it out, and then they migrate from here to Eve Online, right? That happens too. But it is worth noting that, like, Eve Frontiers is currently being sold to a different community than Eve Online. Eve Online is a very entrenched community, and you can even tell by some of the comments in my chat that Eve players are pretty quick to reject this game, which means that it's actually a new population of people, either people that have rejected Eve Online or people that have never really thought to try Eve Online are checking out this game. And they may stick with this game. They may bounce off this game. They may come and become Eve Online players. That would be cool. But another thing that's worth noting is that a lot of, like, this is good for us too. There's a lot of things, you know, let's be frank. Let's talk a little bit about why this game exists, okay? This game does not exist because CCP wanted to just make another Eve game, okay? This isn't like, okay, you know, one of the things that we always hear about is like, oh, CCP's wasting their time on all these other projects. Why are they working on a first-person shooter? Why are they working on a mobile game? Why are they working on all these other games? Just work on Eve Online. You're taking all these resources away from Eve Online. That is not the complaint here. Here's what happened, okay? There was a bunch of crypto bros with a shit ton of money, okay? And I think it was back in 2022, 2023. You know, we saw this rise of, like, the thing about crypto is that it is, in a very real way, a technology that is searching for a purpose, right? It has a lot of good advantages, like the blockchain. You know, I've watched, there's a really great extra credits that talked about, like, the potential of a blockchain-based game where, you know, you could play a fantasy game where, you know, like in a normal game like WoW, right, you can get this legendary artifact, right? And it's like, oh, it's Grom Hellscream's axe, right? Grom Hellscream is this character within the lore. And by doing this dungeon, you can get his axe. And it's like, oh, cool. It's that guy's axe. And that's what kind of makes it so special, right? Well, if you have something that's built on the blockchain, you can actually create real items that have real legacy, right? Like, let's say you have a sword and you go out and you kill this awesome dragon with that sword. And by killing that dragon, you make a permanent change to that sword. It's now, the Dragon Slayer or whatever. And so now if you use that sword, if you sell that sword, if you bequeath it to your friend, whatever it is, like that, it now has this history, and then that person goes and does something else with it, and it grows a further and further history. And this can happen because of the fact that it is on the blockchain. Like that's what the blockchain is actually good at, is creating a legacy, which, if you haven't paid attention much, the creation of legacy is one of the founding principles of EVE Online. So, there's a lot of potential here, but blockchain, all blockchain means is basically blocks of data that are linked together in a chain, right? It's a type of data structure. This is a data structure that we used in normal data structures. It's called a linked list, where basically each block points to the next block, right? This just happens to be a way of recording it in a public ledger, right? So it takes that idea of linked lists, which we've used in programming for decades now, and it turns it into this tool that allows decentralized management of data. You've got multiple places that can store the different data, and that way there's no one controller of the data. That's the entire concept of blockchain, right? But everything from cryptocurrencies to NFTs to whatever else is just trying to figure out a way, because you have the technology, which is the blockchain. You have this concept of how to store data. But then the question is like, well, okay, how do we actually make this useful to anybody, right? So the very first thing is, okay, well, if each node exists in this public ledger, well, we could create artificial scarcity through that. And scarcity is what creates currency. So we could turn these blocks into currency, and that's how you get Bitcoin, right? That was the very first thing that they tried to do with this. They're like, well, we could just use it as a currency. But that was pretty successful. Obviously, Bitcoin has done pretty well. But the question is, okay, well, what else can we do with this stuff? How can we make this useful to people? Well, since each block has we can make each block into a chunk of data, right? So now we've got things like Ethereum. Well, once we have a chunk of data, now we can put things in that data. So we can do things like, I don't know, put a picture in that data. And now each block is distinct from each other block, which makes them non-fungible, right? A fungible thing is something like, in EVE, if you have 50 kestrels, those kestrels are fungible with each other. That's why you can stack them. That's why you can sell them on the market. If you blow up a kestrel and you get another kestrel, they're complete. Like, if I sell you a kestrel and then if I let you borrow a kestrel and then 2 days later you give me back a kestrel, it doesn't actually matter whether or not it's the same kestrel or not. They're completely interchangeable, which makes them fungible, right? But if there's something unique about them, now each one of them is unique. They cannot be traded independently, just freely between each other. They are now called non-fungible tokens, right? And so, okay, well, if we can convince people that a specific non-fungible token is valuable compared to another specific non-fungible token, then we can make them into collectibles, and hence the entire NFT craze. So my point is that all of these things are just derivatives of the original concept. We have this idea, this technology known as the blockchain, and this way of having distributed information and a way of establishing trust through democracy as opposed to a single manager of the data. And so they just continue to try to iterate on making ways in order to sell this to the population. But there's always been this kind of idea that you could build a game off of this, right? Where if each individual piece, if that sword of dragon slaying is useful, then hold on a second, I could theoretically, and I own that backing data that makes that sword, so I could theoretically sell it, right? Yeah, abyssal modules are pretty close to NFTs, ironically enough, but they're not stored on the blockchain. That's the big key. That's kind of the difference. Although I mean, arguably, abyssal modules are NFTs. They're just not NFTs, right? So either way, the point is that the holy grail of all of this is the idea of a game that works with the blockchain. Because so all these guys who are into crypto, they've invested thousands and millions of dollars into this technology, not just into the development of this technology, but in convincing people that this technology is worth it, right? Through NFTs, through Bitcoin, through Ethereum. All these things are just to try to make sure that this stuff has value. Where did my chat go? That's weird. Okay. So, it would have been funny. So, the bottom line is there was a crypto investment group that had $50 million, and they were their goal was to get a game that justified blockchain. Now, some people have tried to do this. I know Ubisoft tried to make a card game that used NFTs that was apparently garbage. It is like Eve meets No Man's Sky. That is very true. So this investment group had $50 million and the goal of making a game that would successfully integrate blockchain technology. And one day at a GDC conference, the Game Developers Conference, Hilmar had a meeting with that group, and he convinced them that he was their guy, right? Hilmar's had all these dreams about how to take Eve to the next step. Like I said, back in 2019, he was talking about wanting to have a physics-based reality and, all of these other things that he would... This is a normal client. This is a regular, real EVE Online client. This is not a browser game, not a mobile game, none of that. So, Hilmar had these ideas of what he would do with Eve if he could do it all over again, right? And by the way, Hilmar dreams of a much, much harder core EVE Online than any of us tolerate, right? Like Hilmar, for example, has been one of the people that have been very outspoken that if he had his way, there would be no NPC stations. There would be no absolute safety, period. Now, obviously, like I said, EVE Online is very established in what it is right now, and so you couldn't really just make that kind of change very easily. Yeah, A16Z is the actual investment group that I'm talking about, or at least the main guy from the investment group. So what Hilmar did was he convinced them that he was their guy, that he already had this idea of this space. He'd already created EVE Online, this space game where societies have been created, the friendship machine. People have studied the economy and the social aspects of EVE Online. There's years of history. There's fucking history books written about the things that we've done in that game. Like, it is an incredible game. And he said, okay, I could make you a version of EVE Online that is built on the blockchain with the idea that eventually it is completely democratized. There is nobody managing this game. It is open source, and it is backed up by the blockchain. So there's nobody who's needing to maintain the database. The rules are established in the beginning, and then from there, it just grows into whatever it grows into. and there's no one manager of that game, which is, it both plays in perfectly to kind of the concept of what EVE Online was always meant to be and what blockchain is always kind of trying to sell itself as. And so CCP received $50 million from this investment company to build this game. So they hired new people, they built new tools, all these kinds of things. So this is not a matter of EVE Online, something being taken away from EVE Online in order to make EVE Frontiers. In fact, quite the opposite. One of the cool things about this is that they're able to develop this stuff for EVE Frontiers in this kind of safe environment, right? Where not every single step of the way is being judged by players who've been playing the game for 20 years, like in EVE Online. And the things that work can then be ported back into EVE Online. Like a lot of the graphical changes and a lot of the, for instance, the upgrade to the newest version of Python is being done first in EVE Frontiers, because EVE Frontiers is a fork of EVE Online. They basically took the code base of EVE Online, forked it off, and then changed it in order to make EVE Frontiers. So they're able to kind of pave the way for certain technology and then backport it into EVE Online. So EVE Online will see benefits from the existence of EVE Frontiers, even if EVE Frontiers doesn't really go that far. So that's pretty cool. It might be noteworthy to mention that Group also owns EVE Coin already now through that investment, according to the annual financial report of Pearl Abyss. Yeah. And that's the whole thing, is that there is, like, the EVE Coin thing is the part that's going to be important to watch, right? Because that is the cryptocurrency portion of this. Now, that's not part of it right now. How that's going to exactly play into everything, I'm not sure. But my point is that this is actually beneficial to the overall EVE Online development. It's not a detriment. Right. It might, but yeah, exactly. It's not worth anything right now, but it potentially could be. It behooves them to make EVE Frontier valuable because that makes their currency valuable. Okay. Does that help at all? Yes. In my understanding, EVE Coin is going to be required to buy the lenses, and those lenses are what's used to extract crude fuel. Okay. Let's see whether or not we can mine carbon here yet. Uh-oh. Huh. There's been carbon here every single time I've looked until now. That's unfortunate. Interesting. All right. Well, either way. What am I doing? Go back over here. So CCP gains the coins, which they can resell to players to gain more lenses, can be purchases. Yes. Okay. So, if I come over here, I can go... build. I'm going to want enough for a portable refinery, which is going to be common. Portable storage, common. Actually, do I even need carbon for this? I don't really want it. Do I need a printer? I think I just need common. If your luck is anything like mine, you'll find a network node on one of the L points. Likely that person mined out the carbon. Right, but it... Well, in previous times I've looked at this, the... it changed... Or, like, it would respawn relatively quickly. I want to get over to here. How are we going to do that? Eesh. Okay. So I could jump there and start heading that direction. But what I want to do, actually, is maybe build my another one of these ships, because when I go to do exploration. Excellent. I'm glad that that helped explain things. Now, there is a white paper, and I've made several videos where we read through the entire white paper. But you can also read through it itself, which is like kind of where they're talking about where they're going with this. Which some of the shit that they talk about is very, very lofty. I don't know. CCP is really good at talking about some high-level stuff that, like, may or may not ever come to fruition. But to be fair, they've done a pretty decent job of kind of delivering on at least some of the concepts that they've been talking about. All right. Let's go ahead and mine some metal-rich ore. Wait, do I need metal-rich? What do I need? No, I have... Let's get some more common ore, I guess. Hold on. So if I make a portable refinery, I can then place it down over here. And now it's building it. It's just that easy. Let's look at some fuel. You did a great breakdown. Thanks. Looking forward to the lore deep dive. There is some actually really interesting lore stuff. I imagine it helps that the game is so close to EVE Online. They have 20 years of... It is actually really interesting. So having been through multiple of these cycles, the game actually used to be a lot closer to EVE Online. In earlier cycles, there was an overview and stuff like that. One of the funny things about these cycles is that a lot of it has been about taking away things, which is kind of why it's in this like weird state right now, where this is definitely the hardest cycle I've seen so far. Because they've kind of taken away a lot of the pieces that make EVE Online functional, and now are trying to put in replacements that work more for what they're looking for, right? So, you know, like, how do we communicate information in a world in which there is no overview? That's why you have this kind of tactical map, right? This is a new concept. So here is my portable refinery. You can see in the portable refinery, we have water ice, which makes fuel, common ore, metal-rich ore. I don't really need that stuff, though. So carbonous ore is where that water comes from. But you also notice that in the small refinery, I can come here and look at common ore and see, look, carbon ore comes with carbonous material, silicates, and feldspar. Whereas if I go to the portable refinery and go to common ore, you see it's just carbonous materials and silicates. There's no feldspar. So there is an advantage to bringing the ore back to your headquarters to refine versus refining it in place. The devs need to change the way that sites respawn. We don't want everything winding up in one dead-end system. Yeah, that is true. Although, in a lot of ways, every system is a dead-end system around here. So we want to build ourselves a new one of these ships, right? So let's go ahead and see what it would take to build one. we can go to my assembler, which is where you build ships. I want to build... Wait, nope. I need... Wait. Never mind. I need to build a shipyard. Nah, technically I just need a printer, right? Because I just want another one of these ships, and you can make them in a portable printer. So portable printer requires carbonous ore. The sites respawning Hillmar seem to want to bake in limited resources. When it's mined out, it's just gone. Well, also, like, one of the interesting things about this, about what they've talked about, is that it's almost like sites regrow, right? Like, the rogue drones will begin to build a site. Do I have any combat sites? I should. But you might need to wait for things to grow. Like, you could either take down the site ahead of time, like early, or you could wait for the rogue drones to finish their construction, and it'll be a much more challenging site. Installation wreckage. Let's go look at the installation wreckage. I'm not convinced that the Reaver is better for combat, honestly. Well, the Reaver and the other one might be. But, like, I don't know. The one that says that it's better for combat, I don't see why it would be better for combat. Because there's no bonuses right now. There's no skills. Oh, this is one of the starting areas. This isn't going to be any good. Yeah, I think so. Let's try killing this thing and seeing what happens. Wait, what? Why does it keep locking? Why do I keep losing my lock? Yeah, I guess so. Oh yeah, this thing's gonna go down. Yeah, this is like, I think this is the site that you first start in when you spawn. Are you gonna have anything cool? You do have a wreck. Feral Echo. I think this is... Feral Echoes are like how you make Lux, which is like their money right now. It's like the thing that you can sell. We're gonna run the repairer for one cycle. Oh, do I... And let's go ahead and loot the cairn. Oh shit. Here comes another one. They're gonna just keep on spawning, I think. I'm gonna afterburner over to this cairn to try to loot it. Nothing. Alright. Let's just head back to base and then figure out where we want to go next. New dev blog for Eevee really caught you by surprise? Which one? Oh! Yeah, we can talk about those. There is some Eve news. We can talk about that today if we get done with everything we want to kind of look at in EVE Frontiers. Or we can look at it another day. I'm not opposed to streaming tomorrow. I'm also not in any rush today. The global Plex market, I think it's going to be fine. I think that it actually... What's interesting about the global Plex market is they've already done a similar thing before that I bet most people don't even remember. Oh, by the way, you do have to, like... So this, as I said, this portable refinery here will despawn in the next 3 days. However, these other structures that I have here, the real ones, are not going to despawn as long as this network node is fueled. Yes, they did. We can talk about it. Should we take a break from eFrontiers and talk a little bit about the global Plex market? Play when they had the original Plex, I don't remember. It was for a couple years. So the short of it is, I guess the what I could say about it is, there was a period of time in 2019-ish time period where, all right, we'll just talk about it. Somebody make a note. Hour and 8 minutes in. Maybe I'll cut it out as its own segment. Okay, let's talk about today's dev blog, the global Plex market and friction. It's not even, don't even worry about derailing me. You know, maybe people need a little break from eFrontiers. That's fine. We can get back into it. Maybe we'll see if the carbon respawns. But, all right, so today I want to talk to you about this dev blog, Global Plex Market and Friction-Free Trade. It is a pretty big change to the way the EVE economy works. This seems to be directly talking about, like, CCP Okami has been talking about one of their biggest problems is people hoarding Plex, and they want to stimulate more people freeing up their Plex and trading in Plex. And this kind of plays into it. Now, they have tried this kind of thing before, but it kind of quietly got shuttered without very many people noticing it. So I think that we have some things to talk about. So let's go ahead and read this first, and then we'll go into the details. Powerful Capsuleers. EVE Online is fundamentally about creation, trade, destruction, and the friendship forged along the way. Our strategies lean into the themes of ultimate science fiction, strong organizations, future of war, and unbridled agency, threads that run through everything we build in the game. These are those 4 pillars of the game that we kind of keep going back to. They iterated on these, but this is kind of where they're at right now. Through unbridled agency in particular, we aim to support personal ambition in hyper-capitalistic future society where players freely choose their path, express personal and group identity, and shape the universe through their actions. Player organizations run the show, as on the battlefields, so on the trades fields, fully embracing this progression in the sandbox MMO. So today, we want to share the next chapter of our economic vision for New Eden, one centered around friction-free trade, fairer access to utility goods, and the future of Plex as a liquid currency that powers gameplay and EVE Online's free-to-play business model. Just in case people do not know, Plex is EVE Online's premium currency, right? So 99% of all of the Plex in the game comes from people paying CCP money. You know, you can either buy a month of game time for $20, or you can buy 500 Plex for $25, and 500 Plex can be used to buy a month of game time, right? So there's a little bit of a premium to buying and trading in Plex, but Plex is also used for a lot of other things, including buying things on the Nest store. So things like the skins from CCP, player certificates, skill extractors, those kinds of things also get bought with Plex. And also anything involving the Skinner tools. Hold on. Things involving Skinner also require Plex to kind of power it. So pretty much any skins in the game, or at least like non-event skins, usually require some sort of Plex in order to get. So over time, Plex has had increasing utility added to the game, which has had the, I guess, unfortunate consequence of making it more valuable. Now, Plex does offer a very interesting secondary value, which must be noted, which is the fact that, like, almost every MMO, almost every MMO has issues with gold sellers, right? People who somehow like extract resources from the game, either through some form of farming or whatever, and then sell the currency to other players in black market kind of ways. And these are very destructive to a lot of currencies, or, to a lot of MMOs. And EVE Online, given the fact that it is about its economy, EVE Online is far more vulnerable to things like gold sellers than other games, right? Like in WoW, you can buy gold, but there's only so much you can get with gold because of the fact that WoW and other MMOs like WoW function off of items that are bind on pickup. Like, gold will only get you so far. They can devalue the currency and make it so that earning gold on your own becomes not a valueless proposition, but a less and less valuable proposition because there's more and more of this currency in system. We see giant goldflation. This leads to currency accretion, where they have to introduce new currencies that make older currencies obsolete, and all these other things. That EVE Online would be very destructive if it had these problems in EVE. Even minor versions of these problems are very destructive to the way EVE works, given the fact that EVE Online in general doesn't have things like bind on pickup and doesn't have things like expansions that make old expansions obsolete, right? Like, they do add new things. There are expansions. I'm not saying that there's no power creep in EVE, but if you built a Roke in 2008, that Roke is still in the game. Oh, shoot. Haha. EVE Frontiers has a cluster shutdown in 14 minutes. So I guess we're done playing EVE Frontiers for now. Either way, so that's fine. We'll keep talking about this then. So the point is that the idea of gold sellers or ISK sellers in EVE, where people would sell ISK for real life money, RMT, it is something that's incredibly, incredibly dangerous to EVE Online for a couple reasons. One, like I said, people could figure out ways to power farm ISK and then sell that ISK to other players, which will flood the market with ISK, which will make everything kind of, it'll hyperinflate the economy. That is a big risk. But also the problem is as soon as you start getting ISK, the ability to sell ISK for money, right? Now people have a real life financial desire to gain ISK as fast as possible, which leads to incredibly negative behaviors in game when it comes to how they farm gold or ISK, like the old Chinese gold sellers or Chinese gold farmers in WoW. But also like not only in-game activities, but also just illegal activities. One of the things that happens, there was a period of time where I think it was the majority of all credit fraud online was WoW, because people were hacking players' accounts and stealing their gold so that way they can turn around and sell it to people, right? As soon as you start putting real life value on this stuff, that people can turn it back into real life value, then you start running into these problems. This is actually one of the concerns that I have with EVE Frontiers, but that's a conversation for another day. The point is that the gold sellers or ISK sellers, RMT, is a real threat to EVE Online. Herein comes Plex, right? So somebody who's doing, for gold selling, for ISK selling to work, you need to have people who are willing to sell that ISK but also people who are willing to buy the ISK, right? So, it's a two-sided coin. You can go after the producers or you could go after the purchasers. And Plex offers this really nice solution to the problem where if someone is willing to pay real life money for ISK, they have a valid solution. This is like, keeping honest people honest, right? So you no longer, if you want to get ISK and you have money, you no longer, if you want to wallet warrior your way through it, you don't have to buy it from black marketplaces. There is a valid way of doing it. You pay for money for ISK, or sorry, you buy Plex, and then you sell the Plex on the market. And then there are players that have ISK. There are people that play this game a lot, that have advanced themselves into the game and have invested in the game enough, that have the play time to generate the ISK. They may not have real life money, right? Like they may be college students or even, younger, and they have plenty of play time. They can grind all day, but they don't have any real life cash. These are the people that really stimulate a lot of the activity in the game. You want them to be able to play the game, but, maybe they can't afford the sub price. So now you've got people that can't afford the sub price, but are playing the game. And you've got people who don't have a lot of time to grind for ISK, but want to be able to play the game and have real life money. So those people with the real life money can buy the Plex and sell it to the people who play the game a lot. And so the people who play the game a lot can fund their account through in-game effort. And the people who don't want to put in the in-game effort can still get what they want with ISK. Great. So you have this legal method of wealth transfer that kind of supports both sides of that coin. And this is probably one of the greatest weapons that they have against RMT. I'm not saying that RMT is completely solved, but I'm saying that like this ability to keep honest people honest puts a cap on that problem, right? Now, if there's consequences to doing things like buying things through RMT, you might as well buy it the legal way, right? So that is kind of the fundamentals of what makes Plex useful. However, over time, CCP has added more and more things to Plex that makes it utilitarianly useful, right? Skill extractors, skins, all these things that we were just talking about, which means that the value of Plex continues to go up. And more importantly, because the value of Plex continues to go up, Plex becomes a really good investment tool for people who are trying to, hold up their stuff in long-term investments. It has been a kind of a known thing since as long as I've been playing that, if you want to store your ISK, if you want a good long-term investment, Plex will, on the long term, always kind of creep its way up. So turning your ISK into Plex, Plex becomes a very good commodity for trading between players. However, over the last few years especially, we've seen this increasing pressure on CCP because, especially with Skinner, I would say. I think that Skinner was the straw that broke the camel's back because, people were able to buy skins from CCP for Plex before, but now that people can just build whatever skins they want, this really puts an extra pressure on people to have a lot of Plex and to store Plex and to put value in Plex. And so, you see this, the value of it creep up. Skill injectors actually was another big one. But the point of the matter is that it's now gotten to the point where CCP is trying to figure out how to make Plex a more functional currency that allows people to trade in it and maybe prevent hoarding of Plex. So that's a lot of what we're looking at here. So we're gonna look at what they have to say now. So today we want to share the next chapter on our economic vision for New Eden, one centered around friction-free trade, fair access to utility goods, and the future of Plex as a liquid currency. TLDR, a major update to Plex trading is coming soon with the introduction of Global Plex Market, a new global market region integrated into the existing market, allowing capsuleers to buy and sell Plex from anywhere in New Eden. This friction-free system aims to boost liquidity, enable fair market equilibrium, and support EVE's evolving economy. Test the changes on Singularity and prepare for launch. As part of these releases on Tranquility, all existing orders will be canceled and fees reimbursed. The exact date will be announced ahead of release. So, as I said, Plex has been like the commodity to trade for as long as I've been playing this game. And as I mentioned kind of at the offset, CCP has experimented with this idea before. So back in, I think it was 2018 or 2019, CCP produced their own mobile app, right? Their own. There's always been mobile apps as long as there's been an API. In fact, one of the reasons why I got into the group that I got into was because there was this old app called Aura, which allowed you to keep track of your skill plan and all that sort of stuff. But, obviously there's only so much that an app can do. And so CCP produced their own application for Android and iOS called the Eve Portal. And one of the big functions of this Eve Portal was that you could buy and sell Plex in JITA. Now, JITA was the main place, obviously, for people to trade Plex. In fact, trading Plex in and around JITA is one of the things that really made the Tranquility Trade Hub in Perimeter as big of a deal as it was. But the point is that they made it so you could trade Plex from in JITA from anywhere. And of course, Plex doesn't need to be transported like a lot of other things, because you have your own Plex wallet. Plex can be pulled in and out of the Plex wallet pretty much freely. So, anybody who ever gets caught and blown up with Plex in their cargo hold is silly, because you could just put it in your Plex wallet. So Plex has been for quite some time this thing that exists outside of the normal mechanics of EVE Online. And this idea of Eve Portal kind of stepped this up another notch, where you didn't even need to have somebody in JITA to trade in it. You could just trade in, you can buy and sell Plex straight out of the app, right? But eventually they stopped supporting the Eve Portal app and it got shuttered. And with it went away this method of trading Plex more freely. Enter CCP Okami in the last few months, like during FanFest and after. He talked about the fact that they are interested in looking at the ways that Plex gets traded and seeing whether or not they can do something about the ever-rising price of Plex and make it so that it becomes more of a traded commodity instead of a more hoarded commodity. Enter their next attempt at making Plex something that gets traded more often. Is this going to make prices go down? It should. This should absolutely make a downward pressure on the price of Plex, right? Okay, so the long-term goal is to ensure that the EVE economy works for everyone, veterans, newcomers, and everyone in between. This means reducing artificial barriers, minimizing rent-seeking behavior, and improving access to goods that support your progression, convenience, and identity in the game. What is this? Oh, it's Wikipedia for rent-seeking. Rent-seeking is the act of growing one's existing wealth by manipulating the social or political environment without creating new wealth. Rent-seeking activities have negative effects on the rest of society. So basically, attempting to manipulate the economy in such a way that increases your wealth without actually producing any extra value for anybody else, like rentals, right? So in this sense, like by hoarding Plex, they increase the value of Plex without actually increasing any utility of that Plex. As stewards of New Eden's economy, CCP acts as both custodian and regulator, a central bank of sorts. And like a central bank in the real world, we care about economic health, access, and stability, tirelessly working on reducing economic friction and uncertainty. Plex plays a foundational role in this system, but over time, as discussed in a previous blog, this is where they talked about it. Yeah. They said, over the past few years, we've steadily added more... let's talk Plex. The primary currency of the nest, the backbone of the player-driven trading, and for many, a long-term investment vehicle. It is no secret that Plex plays multiple roles in EVE, and right now, those roles are colliding in ways that we believe deserve both attention and action. Over the past few years, we've steadily added more products to the Nest and the Paragon Hub. This means more ways to use Plex, which is good, but it also puts more pressure on the supply side of the equation. Like we are seeing now with it being one of the lowest the market has ever seen. At the same time, Plex has developed a kind of stock market appeal, especially among veteran players who see it as an asset to hoard and flip. The result? A large, ever-growing, slow-moving float of Plex held in wallets across New Eden, leading to less liquidity on the market. Now, the other thing that's worth noting about this, before we get too deep into it, is you got to realize that from a business standpoint, this is also very, very, very bad for CCP. Plex to CCP on a business level is a liability. Because if you think about it, every 500 Plex that's in the system is the availability for somebody to get a month of game time without paying CCP any more money, right? CCP's already made the money. They've already been paid the money for that Plex, but they don't get to really count that money until the Plex gets spent, right? Because it's still sitting there as a liability. It's untapped potential. So the more Plex that remains out of circulation, the more that Plex that remains in players' wallets, the worse it is for CCP's bottom line. This is one of the things, like, I know Oz especially calls them out for this. There's accusations of them doing big Plex or big sales on things that you can spend Plex on about the time of like quarterly reports in order to kind of shore up their numbers. Because again, the more Plex that's in people's Plex wallets and not being spent, the worse that is for CCP. So keep that in mind too. Like, they are absolutely encouraged to fix this problem on a level that is not true with almost anything else in the game, right? If people use Spitpulls too much, that isn't actually affecting CCP's bottom line. But if people are hoarding large amounts of Plex, that can really hurt them. So, all right. Incoming Plex ammo. Gold ammo! Yeah! No, wait. Don't cancel me! This limited availability, especially during rare sales or high activity events, creates volatility and drives up ISK price of Plex. That volatility can destabilize the broader player economy, contributing to inflation and making the climb steeper for new and returning players who rely on Plex to access Omega or other NES items. We know that this is not sustainable. We're actively working to ease the pressure. What we've done so far: Air daily goals now include Plex as a permanent reward, creating a steady stream of accessible Plex for active players. Seasonal events increasingly feature Plex in their seasonal reward tracks. Occasional Plex gifts mark special milestones and in-game events. Mysterious Galnet crates 1 and 2 featured in Twitch drops and tradable in in-game market also offers a chance at Plex. So they've started introducing Plex into the game through more methods than just people paying them money, which is good for trying to stimulate that price of Plex, but it's definitely not good for CCP's bottom line, right? Because it used to be that every Plex that existed in the game existed because somebody paid them money. Which, remember, to them, Plex equals money because people can spend Plex instead of spending money in order to sub their account. So, this is a fairly risky plan for them in order to alleviate this pressure. These steps help, but we know that they're not enough. We're exploring additional tools and mechanics that can rebalance the flow of Plex, making it feel less like a speculative asset and more like a practical, fluid currency that powers your in-game choices. So what comes next? Whatever changes we make, we aim to open doors for new pilots, close loopholes for armed tiers, and shake loose some of the unhealthy speculation that's built up around Plex over time. Because in EVE, it is not the richest who survive, it's the smartest. So this is what they said 2 months ago. Let's look at what their solution is today. But over time, as discussed in the previous blog, its function has drifted. It's increasingly treated as a long-term investment or speculative asset rather than a flexible, fluid currency meant to empower player choice. Like I said, this has been true as long as I've been playing the game, but it has become increasingly true over time. What if you could charge weapons with Plex? Okay, I'm done. I'm done with you guys. That dynamic distorts pricing, limits access, and creates artificial scarcity that benefits a few of at the expense of many. We've committed to fixing that without resorting to harsh measures like inventory taxes, price hikes, or product removals. Instead, we're focusing on a system-level change that moves us closer to a healthy, fair market equilibrium. A philosophy rooted in progression, convenience, and identity. Every change made is grounded in EVE's core monetization pillars. I may not know much about RMT, but every time they bring it up, it feels like a talking point that they don't understand. I think it's a, like, Noisy. I think that part of this is that you got to remember that MMOs are 25 years old now. In the grand scheme of things, that's nothing. This is new technology. These are social structures and social problems that are still incredibly novel. I think that you're right. They don't understand it because I don't know if anybody fully understands it. Like, we all have our theories about it, but we're all just trying to figure out something that is, in the history of mankind, fairly new. Like, we can apply the old. Okay, well. By the way, Noisy Gamer is an incredibly thoughtful and informed player who does a lot of really interesting analysis about CCP as a company and their financials and the economics, as well as the economics of EVE Online. I strongly recommend you check out Noisy Gamer's blog and take what he says seriously, even and maybe even especially if he disagrees with me. So I just want to point that out too, since we're having this discussion. But yeah, so the old Plex was much better for on paper. If you didn't use it, then the other option was selling it or moving it somewhere else. Yeah, well, I mean, yeah. In theory, the old Plex, when Plex only was used to sub your account, then you had the concern about, if it's about PvP, always listen to Ash over you. Woo, never mind. I appreciate it, Noisy. It is true that, like, in the original days of Plex, you were kind of betting on the popularity of EVE Online, right? If people didn't need to sub their accounts, then your Plex would not be as valuable, right? It was kind of the weight of people who want to sub their accounts versus people who want ISK, right? But over time, with the adding of free to play and the addition of skill extractors and skins and Skinner, you're no longer necessarily banking on that, right? You can actually increase the amount of Plex that's needed by the player base without actually increasing the player base. In fact, we did see this in the financial reports around the 2020 era, where even though we saw a dip in the number of active players, we actually saw an increase in CCP's revenue as the players were spending more money per person because there were more meaningful things to people to invest their money in. And in this case, when we talk about money, Plex is that intermediary of that money, right? So that is a very good point. The funny part is that the player base was very large during the Apocrypha time. Apocrypha was a lightning in a bottle that everyone has been trying to recapture ever since. So, yeah. All right. A philosophy rooted in progression, convenience, and identity. Every change made is grounded in EVE's core monetization pillars. Progression, enabling you to move forward at your own pace. Convenience, making essential systems intuitive and accessible. Identity, giving you a meaningful way to express who you are. The philosophy has guided past changes such as introducing soul-bound MCT to reduce hoarding and speculation. So actually, this is something that people, for a comparison, Plex in online is the same as EVE coin in Frontier. That's actually probably a fairly, it is definitely comparable. Yeah. So this is actually something that we've talked about when we look at packs from CCP. So there are multiple character training certificates. So multiple character training, normally you've got 3 characters on your account. You can only train one at a time. A multiple character training certificate allows you to train an extra skill queue per account, right? So you can train 2 or 3 of your accounts at the same time, or your characters on at the same time. However, over time, more and more of the packages that come with this stuff have come with MCT, not MCTC, not certificates. So it used to be that you'd buy the pack and that multiple character training certificate could just be considered extra value because you could then turn around and sell that thing. But with it being soulbound, it applies to your account automatically. You're not allowed to sell it to anybody else. So now you either see the value in a second character training or you don't. You can't just turn it into ISK, right? Making skill books globally accessible to support new players and specializing their chosen careers. So originally, all skill books had to be bought from NPC vendors or found in like exploration or wherever else. Eventually, they made it so that all of the skill books that could be bought from vendors, like NPC buy orders, you can now just buy them out of the UI in the skill window. Now, there's a 30%, I think, markup there, which makes it so it's still valuable to hunt down the skill books if you can. And there are some skills that can only be gotten through skill books because they have to be acquired through exploration or LP stores or some other method. But the vast majority of the day-to-day skills that people purchase, they can just now buy out of the skill browser. That's what they're talking about there. Taking early steps towards regulating LP trading. So, you know, this was something that was asked for a very long time. You know, LP is something you accrue over time by doing missions or faction warfare or whatnot. And now they've made it so that you can donate your LP to the corporation. And then I think corporations can trade LP from one corporation to the other. Either way, they've kind of loosened up the idea of LP trading. I don't think that they've gone full ham with it yet, but they've definitely made it so that, like, just the fact that you can donate it to your corporation or the corporation can tax it has now made it into kind of this communal thing, not just an individual resource that a lot of people, let's be frank, just let it kind of build up, right? Oh yeah, stuff for wormholes are coming. Okay. Unlocking a path for artisan skindustrialists, enabling careers for personalization via skins, logos, and design assets. This has been pretty cool. You know, I think that the Skinner tool is... What's interesting is what I have found is that the Skinner tools have been very popular. We've had several people that have really gotten into it and loved it. I know Punch, for example, like most of his gameplay at this point is just thinking about and creating cool looking skins. But I would say that the actual skin market has not been as popular. So making new skins in the Skinner tool has gained some popularity, but the actual act of like people buying skins, they haven't quite gotten there yet. So, and I think that Punch would definitely agree with me on that one. Making people more interested in buying and trading these skins, I think, is a big step. That hasn't happened yet, I would say. And then making select expert systems tradable on the regional market. Expert systems are an additional way for somebody to kind of bootstrap their progression in the game. Now, instead of just buying Omega and training or buying skill points and injecting or whatever, you can buy an expert system, which gives you access to certain skills for a limited amount of time. A good example of this is actually Indeed, the market is not good, very hard to sell, even mostly good stuff. Yeah, I agree. And I've watched Punch kind of struggle with this, where he's come up with stuff where I've shown it off, people love it, nobody buys it. So, which is weird because, like, some people talk about how Skinner stuff is too expensive, but like it's comparable with the skins that are on the normal Nest store. It's just there's something about going into the Skinner market, like the Paragon Hub, and choosing a skin that you want and purchasing it for your own ship. This is just not become part of the way that we play the game yet. I wish making cheap. The thing is that like I said, the prices are pretty comparable to what people pay on the Nest store. And what's weird is that people do buy things on the Nest store. You see people with Nest skins all the time. there's something about the freedom of the market of the Paragon Hub that causes people to not go and look at them. I think it has something to do with the fact that when you open up your ship fitting, you can go and look at all of the different skins that are available for it, and you can click on them, and you can click on the thing that immediately like it shows you what you can buy for Plex, what you can buy for ISK, and you can kind of preview them all right there. And so you pick which ones of those. Well, there's the bundle ones too, but I'm talking about the ones that are just on the Nest store. What I think is happening, if we could have a little bit of an aside, is that, like I said, people are pulling up the fitting tool and they're just looking at the skins and they're like, okay, which of these skins do I like the most that I can afford, right? And that is kind of where they're getting their idea from of their skin. Whereas the path that leads them to go look on the Paragon Hub for a skin isn't quite as well established right now. I think that that's a big part of it. But yeah, paralysis of choice is a big part of it too. But I think, like, right now, the Skinner system, as it shows, usually boils down to, like, there's 2 or 3 different choices that you can make, and you can go look at the market and be like, oh, I really like cold iron. Oh, that's really cheap. I'll get that one. And that's it. That's how you make your decision. Yeah. Having a Paragon Marketplace place button in the skin browser might be a good thing. It is there. There is a button, but it just brings you to the Paragon Hub. It doesn't let you showcase a bunch of the skins from the Paragon Hub in that one, in your fitting window. There's an extra step there that then people go and then they see. The other problem is, here's the other problem. When you're looking at the skins in your fitting window, you don't see the prices, right? You look at the skins and you kind of get it in your head which skin you're kind of into and which skins you don't really care about. And then you click on them to go and see what the price on the market is, right? You're like, oh, this one looks really good. Oh shit, that's like 2 billion ISK, never mind. And so then this other one that's like only 30 million ISK. Okay, well, I'll get that one then. Whereas every skin that's presented to you in the Paragon Hub has the price right there on it. So I think that people are allowing the prices of, like, they'll look at all of the different skins and all the different prices, and that just makes their brain shut down. Right? Now I want McDonald's. What is this page? This is the dev blog for the new global Plex market and friction-free trade. Okay, either way, enough of that. Nest skins are shown in space lighting. Skinner is not. The lighting is not reflective of space. That's true, but I'm not sure how much that's actually that's affecting skindustrialists and their ability to make cool skins. But I'm not sure how much it's affecting the players that are choosing the skin, because I don't even know if they're getting to that point, because they don't even open it up to look at the skin. They're just looking at them. Like, if they do look at anything, they're just looking at the list of all of the different skins and their prices. And they're like, I'll just get cold iron, right? All right. Either way. Expert systems, regional market, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Friction-free trade and the value chain. At the heart of EVE is a player-driven economy, a web of interconnected value chains. Every feature should strive to be a part of it while being exposed to the ever-present risk, from exploration and harvesting of raw materials to industrial research and production to hauling and trade, to solo PvP and massive fleet fights. Every step adds value, creates emergent gameplay, and generates derived opportunities across and within that ecosystem. Rare loot for explorers, margins for industrialists, and in the end, satisfaction to the end user. Trading then drives the value exchange of labor across multiple currencies. But not all goods in EVE follow the same life cycle. There are a lot of moving parts in this value exchange. Over time, we've developed internal classifications for the various types of economic objects in New Eden. Let's break them down. Player-made goods. Ships, modules, rigs, boosters, anything manufactured and value added by you from the ground up. These items reflect skill, risk, and market interaction, with a desired and expected utility, fairly estimated item value, and transparent price. Utility goods. Items like Plex, skill books, MCT, skill extractors, expert systems, introduced by CCP and tradable when not soulbound. This carry little to no player added value, yet often generate profits through arbitrage and speculative investment. This is not part of the value chain. It extracts margins without contributing. These goods should be accessible as their utility demands, which means eliminating unnecessary trading friction. Skip to the next chapter if we got your attention here. What's interesting about this is true-ish, right? Like, let's look at skill books, for example. Skill books, as we just said, or as I said a little bit ago, you know, it used to be that all skills were done through skill books, but now you can buy some skill books, or a lot of the skill books, from the actual UI itself. However, there's a 30% markup in that. And the reason why this is because there are people who just buy skill books and bring them from, because skill books are not just sold everywhere universally. They're sold by the various corporations that develop that skill, right? So different empires have different skills that they specialize in, different corporations have different skills that they specialize in, et cetera, et cetera. So for instance, one of the things that was a big consideration when they made this change was there are people in nullsec that literally like go to highsec, buy all the skill books up, and then bring them over to their nullsec group and resell them to their own people. And so that is player added value because it's the convenience of location. This is that logistics and transportation side of things. So this isn't necessarily always true. It's not like skill extractors where, you know, if I buy a skill extractor with Plex and then turn around and sell it, I haven't actually done anything besides just turn Plex into skill extractors, which everybody can do. There's a certain amount of like the logistics of it could theoretically be a value there too. But I can see where they're pointing out the problem here. Digital goods. These represent identity and expression, apparel, logos, CCP-made skins, and design elements. Many digital goods suffer from the limited discoverability because they are treated like physical items. And here there is an important distinction between physical goods, the manufactured items that need to be hauled, fitted, and may be lost, versus personalization assets that confer no combat advantage by being available on demand in the universe. When you want to swap a logo, put on leather boots and a pair of sunglasses, or find a legacy skin you've always dreamt of on the market without spending an hour acquiring it, you should be able to. So this is actually an interesting point. One of the very first, like back in the day, one of the fundamentally important cornerstones of EVE was that everything was destructible, right? And the very, very, very first niche in that universal truth was clothing items. This goes back to the Summer of Rage, which I've done videos about and all that stuff. And it also is worth noting that clothing items were the very first thing that kind of took Plex that wasn't game time, right? I don't think that these things being like these things, this is not a coincidence, right? So when they first started selling clothing to us, there's this problem where it's like, they're going to sell us a $60 monocle. People didn't want that $60 monocle to just be able to be destroyed. So they had to create this balancing act between their, like, everything is destructible and I spent real life money and I want to make sure that I'm safe in that investment. And in the end, when it comes to clothing items, what they decided was clothing items that are on you can be are safe, right? There's this one time that we were evacuating some stuff from LowSec, and there was this shirt that happened to be pretty valuable, and I needed to move it from one place to another. Now, I could have just thrown it in a hauler and like quickly tried to get out of there, and it probably would have been safe. But probably safe isn't the same as actually safe. So I go into the customization. I literally put the shirt on my character. I then move to the other system, and I open up the customization, and I switch it back to my other outfit. right? And that drops the shirt back into that inventory spot. So now I'm able to move that shirt without any risk of it being destroyed. This was the very, very, very first time that this was possible. And it was the very first compromise when it comes to this idea of anything destructible. Now, the most extreme example of this is actually what we mentioned earlier, which is the Plex wallet, right? I can buy Plex in JITA while I'm in nullsec. And, you know, I can even buy it with my JITA alt, a totally different character, and it goes into my Plex vault. Nothing can happen to my Plex in my Plex vault. And then in nullsec, I can pull that Plex out of my Plex vault and then sell it on the market there. So I can transport it from JITA to nullsec for free instantly without any risk whatsoever. This is completely anathema to the original mentality that everything is destructible. By the way, that's the proper use of anathema. For those of you who don't know about the Mars exploration ship. Either way, so this is an interesting thing where, like, we have over time accepted this as an aspect of the game, but it does mean that there's these weird half compromises with things like clothing items, where it is technically destroyable if you put it in your cargo bay, but it's also technically invulnerable if you put it on. Whereas Plex is technically destroyable but you're dumb if you put it in your cargo bay. Either way. And then, of course, logos are even more interesting because logos are completely separate from the rest of the economy. You cannot buy logos with money. Technically speaking, you can buy things to turn them in for Paragon or Evermarks and then use that to buy logos. But, like, you can't trade logos. You can't, like, when you buy a logo, you're buying it for yourself, period, with a currency that cannot, once you have Evermarks, there's no real way to turn Evermarks into anything that's any. No, I do not pronounce. I'm a good Catholic. I know how to pronounce anathema. I know it bothers me when people. No, it's an anathema. Any rate, all right. So, singletons, in a term for player-made items that have a unique identity. These include artisan skins, abyssal rolled items, packaged ship fittings, and more. So, you know, NFTs, non-fungible tokens, things that are individualized. Artisan skins are traded in the Paragon Hub, while others are currently traded through contracts, and their complexity limits trade volume. By elevating these items and making them easier to discover and use, we can drive these specific value chains, such as blueprint research and invention, abyssal, and more. Which is actually an interesting point. I hadn't really thought of this yet, but, you know, artisan skins kind of fall into the same problem as abyssal mods, right? If you're looking for an abyssal mod, like, you can sell abyssal mods on on contracts, but there's very little in as far as, like, discoverability tools when it comes to selling abyssal mods, which makes it very difficult to sell abyssal mods. Now, there is websites now which allow you to, like, trade, like, you can search all of the abyssal mods that are on contracts. So you can, like, look for, I'm looking for a web that has a range of at least 15 kilometers. Like, you can do that better. So there are some discoverability tools for abyssal mods, but they're basically unsupported in game, which makes them very similar to artisan skins. It is intended not only for trade goods, but also ideas, concepts, and support materials that are often hard to find. These can be player-made guides and useful objects such as ship fittings and skill plans, where the hub can act as a modern browsable and searchable e-commerce platform with voting, favorites, recommendations, and eventually even third-party integration, like that abyssal selling. The contract system is extraordinarily old. While we're not replacing contracts anytime soon, our long-term vision is to connect systems like contracts and the market with the Paragon Hub, giving you better tools to find and share what you need. Currencies and quasi-currencies, ISK, LP, Plex, and skill points. You know what's another interesting thing here? Is that this also includes, there's this weird hybrid of this, which is the gambling thing, the hypernet, right? While the hypernet does trade in things that are fungible, each individual hypernet offer is individualized. And so I find it very interesting, like the decisions that they've made in some of these things. Like, so in the Paragon Hub, when you go look in the Paragon Hub, what you'll see is you'll see the latest things put up first. So, you know, if you put up a skin and it doesn't sell right away, it'll quickly kind of fall behind other people who's put up their own skins. It's not based on price or anything like that. Whereas like with the HyperNet, it actually has this interesting tool where it gives you kind of a random assortment of things to look at, to kind of see, like, because it's designed to try to catch your eye. So maybe we could do something like that where like 5 or 6 of the skins that are on the Skinner, the Paragon Hub, are visible on the fitting tool, you know, random or whatever, just to give people a little bit more discoverability. Currencies and quasi-currencies. ISK, LP, Plex, and skill points are not only used to trade, but are also used for trade, but are also traded themselves. The long-term goal is to support regulated currency exchange with depth and liquidity, eliminating the need to manually wrangle multiple orders or exploit contracts to avoid fees. Each category comes with its own challenges. We prioritize reforms based on their friction, economic impact, and player feedback. Which categories cause the most friction for you? Let us know on the Discord, the forums, or in space, or through your elected CSM representatives. It's kind of looked like CCP was looking to update it with the new player contracts in the opportunities window, but it's in a weird place for that. Yeah, it's true, and like I think that part of this is running into the issue of like agile development within Eve, right? Where like you kind of see increasing fragmentation of what UI is used for what, based on what's being focused on. This is why I've always said that, you know, we should kind of condense things like opportunities, show info, and agency into one UI and have it be Aura, which becomes kind of your go-to place, but it is what it is. Okay, friction-free trade for Plex. Plex is unique in gaming history. From its inception to its role as New Eden's foundational currency, it represents one of the boldest experiments in player-driven economy design and CCP's commitment to supporting it. Plex is also a cornerstone of Eve's free-to-play model and its most frequently traded utility item. However, its market is not as effective as we'd like due to several factors. But my hesitation is there are now, like, Plex was revolutionary when it came out, but now other games, like WoW even has a token that's very similar to Plex. So, you know, it's not unique at this point, but it is, they were the first, and here's the important thing, due to the other natures of EVE Online, the destructibility of things, the lack of permanence in EVE, etc., Plex has worked in EVE in a way that has been incredibly destructive in other games. For a lot of the same things that we were talking about before, where like as soon as you start putting real life value on in-game currencies, like the ability to turn ISK into game time through Plex, you start to run into some problems. Like for instance, in WoW, so like Final Fantasy XIV doesn't have a token like WoW. And a lot of people see this as a good thing because WoW, a lot of people look at the token that was added into WoW and see it as a destructive force because it gave this like intrinsic value to gold that really hyper amplified all of the problems with gold inflation that they had prior to that. And so people have expressed that like having something like a WoW token in Final Fantasy XIV would be destructive to Final Fantasy XIV. And yet it's not destructive to EVE Online. And that's because in games like Final Fantasy XIV and WoW, progress is permanent, right? Once you gain a new piece of gear, once you gain some additional amount of power in the game, once you've progressed in some way in the game, that is permanent. Nothing can take that from you. Whereas in EVE, nothing is permanent. Everything is ephemeral. And so this prevents things like Plex from being a, you know, buying power kind of thing, right? I wouldn't necessarily consider EVE pay to win because Plex exists. I like to joke that it's pay to have a much more expensive kill mail, right? If somebody who doesn't know anything about Eve pays $1,000 and buys themselves a new super, all they're really doing is setting themselves up for failure, right? Whereas in WoW, if you buy some big, nice, fancy gear or mount or whatever, like nothing will ever take that effectiveness from you. The only thing that can happen is it be made obsolete by Blizzard or whoever introducing a new item that is even stronger. So you see power creep and this kind of treadmill effect, whereas in Eve, as I mentioned before, if you built a Roke in 2008, that's still a Roke and it's still good. Neverwinter does this through Zen Market. There's, especially on PC, just stockpiles the main currency, just waiting to be turned into Zen by wallet warriors. Last time I looked, it was 6-month turnaround. Yeah, exactly. It's a problem. It's a problem in other games that the nature of Eve manages to make it resistant to. This is why Eve was able to transition to a free-to-play game without changing much about the fundamentals of the game itself. Because Eve has things that are true about the nature of its economy that are not true about other MMOs. And so other MMOs have to figure out ways to get around these things, where Eve just kind of lets it be what it is. All right. It is a safe investment, much like gold, having both intrinsic and extrinsic value, being the only item in the game directly tied to real-world currency. This is why I was talking about earlier, where people just kind of assume that Plex is a very good investment. It may not always keep going up, but it certainly, like, Plex has never crashed in the history of Eve that I know of. So it's a very good way to store your value, if nothing else. It lives in the vault and is usable from anywhere, but could be bought regionally. It behaves like a currency in design, but like a speculative asset in practice. It does not bear any cost of capital. CCP has no interest rates on debt, wealth taxes, nor inventory costs. There's no competition for investment like the stock market or bond market. So yeah, you can hold on to Plex forever and just wait for it to come back to being valuable. Its market is shallow, clustered in trade hubs like the Forge, Domain, Metropolis, Sync Liaison, and Hematar. Like I said, like even before, when they did this last time, they solved the problem by letting you just trade in JITA. It's still happening in JITA, right? It's simply the easiest and best way to store capital in both the short and the long term. That's absolutely true. But that will have all the downsides of people being dissatisfied with wealth taxes. Yeah, that would be an incredibly unpopular, like that would be a very dangerous solution, right? Like anything involving like adding new limits on how much you can store in a structure or a wealth tax of any kind in Eve. Like this is one of those things that we were talking about when it comes to Frontiers, where it's like the player base is so cemented in their ways at this point. It's a 22-year-old game almost at this point. So like you just couldn't get away with that anymore. Like think about like even just adding the idea that structures could become abandoned was so controversial. But people were able to get over it because, you know, people like me reminded everybody that they warned us from the very beginning that it wasn't necessarily going to be protected forever. But like adding a cap on how much you could have or a wealth tax would be, it's not even a matter of technical issue at that point. It's completely a design issue where like, how would you even manage that? How would you decide how to handle all the edge cases? What would you do with the extra stuff? It would make make way more problems than it would solve, basically. Yeah, New York tried something like that and all the rich people left. Yeah, well, I mean, they could apply it to all of New Eden and then like, where are you going to go? But at the same time, it doesn't, I don't think it would, it doesn't fix anything. If anything, it just kind of shunts the bleeding. We've started increasing Plex supplies through daily goals, events, and other means, but one structural issue remained. Capsulers couldn't easily buy or fairly sell Plex outside of the major hubs. Yeah, I mean, people have JITA alts to be able to buy and sell stuff, but not everybody has it. That, you know, when you're talking about friction, that would, yeah, where would you go? Somewhere else, a different game. Maybe Frontier. No. The idea of having to have another JITA, like having a JITA alt, is a barrier to entry that does preclude a lot of people from engaging in it. And, you know, people have that choice. It does take a little bit of extra work. And more importantly, like, there's a certain amount of disassociation of identity. There are a lot of players that like play with one character. And so the idea of having a JITA alt is just alien to their brain. And, you know, while you could say, well, just do it, like, their gameplay isn't invalid. Why are you punishing them for having a character and not wanting to have a second one that's just in JITA? The solution: introducing the global Plex market. Later this summer, CCP loves... We are in the era of this is coming, but not right now. I swear to God. Anyway, later this summer, we'll be launching a region-agnostic market for Plex. That means all Plex buy and sell orders are pooled into a global region, a single virtual location accessible from everywhere, no traveling required. Bought Plex is still delivered to your vault, no hauling needed as before. Location and standings-based listing taxes and fees won't change for now, which is weird. Because, like, how's that going to work? Whose taxes is it going to be based off of? And trading from private structures will remain the same for now. I guess it's wherever you happen to be. That's what you happen to use. Trading from private structures will remain the same for now. You can trade, sell, buy within that structure. So, like, basically, the listing fees and everything is all the same. But instead of being listed in that one structure, it's instead listed in the global market. Fair. This will make it much easier to acquire Plex from anywhere, whether it's to buy Omega, manufacture skins, or buy anything from the New Eden store, while making it much likelier that there's a competitive market for those who want to sell their Plex, especially in smaller amounts. We expect this change to boost Plex liquidity, enable conditions that move us closer to a healthy, fair market equilibrium, encourage broader Plex adoption across the game, and reduce price disparities and improve availability. You know what? I have a fifth prediction with this. And I think that this is actually, in my opinion, the best one. This is another huge blow to JITA, right? JITA is like the universal market, and all things kind of flow towards JITA. And having these secondary markets has always been kind of this challenge, right? And the thing is that while you can buy your ship and your fitting in Dodixie or in Heck or in Renz or in Amar, if you're trying to buy a skin or if you're trying to buy Plex, you just know you need to go to JITA because that's the place where everything kind of flows to. And so Plex is like the biggest commodity traded in the game. A huge amount of the volume of trade happens around Plex. And so those two facts come together to make JITA remain locked in as this place that, like, even if you want to trade in Heck and Renz and Amar or Dodixie, you still have to, like, deal with JITA because that's where the stuff is. And the biggest stuff that's there is Plex. And so decoupling this from JITA is going to help make it so that you don't actually have to rely on JITA for these things anymore. You know, you could just work in your own trade hub knowing that if you need to buy Plex, you can just buy it where you want to be. This is a huge blow to JITA as a trade hub, which, in my opinion, is a great thing. I honestly, personally believe that that might be the most useful piece of all of this to me. Now, I'm not saying that any of this is not true. I'm just saying, like, I think that is a big, big deal. How many traders are currently in Perimeter and JITA solely and exclusively to buy and sell Plex? There's a lot of them. There's a lot of them. And now they don't need to be there anymore. And that is pretty cool. We recognize that this change will reduce some regional arbitrage and speculation opportunities, but we believe that the benefits outweigh the drawbacks, so we will closely monitor the outcomes and prepare to adjust as needed. The global Plex market will be available in Singularity for testing on 1600 UTC on the 27th of June. which is now. Wait, is that true? Hold on. I can't. Hold on. That's a. Jeff says one of the things I wanted the CCSP add was an alliance to name their systems that would make great ISK sync and allow. I think that that's true. I think that that should be a thing that people can do with their their infrastructure hub. Can I log into Singularity right now? Sissy's open. Sissy's open, guys. Breaking news. No, yeah, that's probably the low key the biggest thing in this whole announcement. All right. Singularity for testing on the 27th of June until the 30th of June. Jump in and share your feedback. As part of the release to Tranquility, all existing orders will be canceled and fees reimbursed. The exact date will be announced ahead of release. So we invited everyone to test order creation, modification, and cancellation in stations and structures across New Eden on Singularity to get prepared for the fully benefits when the unified market when they arrive. We believe that there are more ways to reduce the overall trade friction in New Eden, and we will continue to explore those. The global market for Plex is both a stepping stone and a learning opportunity, which always goes well together. With your feedback shared on Discord, the forums, or wherever you fly, come join the conversation. Plex market feels weird with no locations. I mean, it feels weird right now, but I think it's something that we'll get used to. Yeah, unfortunately, that's true. So I'll post it. There's the link. Oh my God, don't do this. So basically no one will be able to use markets apart. No one will use any other markets apart from the Perry 0% market. What are you fucking talking about? It's the opposite of that. Like right now, everybody has to go to the perimeter market in order to do this. Now you can do it locally with your own market. Now you can put up a Fortizar in a wormhole and then put a trade hub in it and then sell your Plex without ever leaving the wormhole. What are you talking about? It's the exact opposite. I can't even with the forums right now. All right, hold on. Let's go look at Hobo Leaks. Anything serious here? No. By the way, guys, make sure to go to the Pulse video, this video here.
And Galente Federation Day.
I'm not going to play the whole video for you guys right now, but I am going to link it. Make sure to go to this link, guys, and type in the chat Pulse and then your character name. And you can get that skin right there. It's pretty cool. Maybe we can check it out on Singularity. This is what the Drifter simulated images were saying all along. Yeah, it's the sacrilege.
Skill training completed.
So what happens if I look at Plex now? Oh, look at that. Look at that. There's no location information. There's just the Plex itself. That's pretty cool. All right. Also, let's go ahead and look at the sacrilege. Oops. See, if you look at the Skinner, you can see, like, here's the link to the Paragon Hub. But if there was like a collection of a few of the skins here, that could maybe help out a lot. But if we come here, we can see... Wait, they don't even have it here yet? Aha. Okay, well, whatever. I guess I can't even showcase the skin. That's a weird choice. All right, well, all that said, I think that it's just about 3 hours in. Let me know if you guys want me to stream this weekend. But we will definitely be back next week with more information. I have a lore video to edit. I did come out with the missile guide, guys. Go check it out. But I need to go to the bathroom, and I think that we've pretty much covered everything we want to cover today. There is a New Eden news. Shit. All right, let me go pee real quick, and then we'll go do the New Eden news. I'll be right back. All right. Let's get this going. All right, ready? Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashtarothi, the voice of New Eden. This is your New Eden news for June 26th, YC127. Skyhooks exposed after Upwell suffers cyber attack. Upwell Consortium suffers cyber attack. The Upwell Consortium has reported compromises to the security of Equinox infrastructure following an extensive cyber attack on Tuesday. According to the official statement issued by the consortium, a self-replicating worm virus has uploaded into the remote network that connects to the Equinox suite. Since infiltrating the system, the virus has spread rapidly, infecting 100% of all Skyhooks and Metanox drills. The virus targets the positioning systems of infected structures and shares the location of Metanox drills and Skyhooks that are vulnerable to attack. This virus makes use of evolutionary algorithm that allows it to adapt to changing security protocols. This advanced adaptability of the virus has prevented Upwell from removing it or reversing its effects. Pirate groups have been quick to respond to this new information. New Gerissus and Angels recruitment efforts have been established in the Fulcrum and Zarzak. This has led to speculation that the Deathless Circle was aware of the cyber attack prior to the commencement. The DED, which has been working with Upwell to identify the perpetrators of the attack, would neither confirm nor deny these rumors. Quote, the investigation is ongoing, end quote, according to official statement, and quote, and all possibilities are being considered. We have no doubt that we will be able to identify the source of this attack and bring them to justice, end quote. Upwell has denied rumors that they are also contracting Mortis Legion's forces to extend the investigations beyond the legal limits that constrain the DED. Drifter wormhole occupiers clash over mounting controversies. Research into the mysterious structures inside of the captured Drifter wormhole systems continue as the controversial proposal of the Drifter Summit divide the leadership of the occupying factions. The Caldari and the Amar have led calls for a closed research policy within the occupying factions, while Mimitar Republic and Edencom leadership have been hesitant to reject the summit's recommendations for a more open research policy. The Triglavian Collective has not been invited to join the debate, but is believed to prefer a policy of proving, in which the information can only be shared with those who are found to be worthy. Despite these divisions, each faction has continued to invest greater individual efforts into Drifter research. Scientific delegations have been recorded visiting the Mimitar, Caldari, and Amar. Edencom, which does not have an established research wing, has begun recruiting for an expansive research and development program. Edencom has also begun talks with Upwell, the designers of Edencom vessels, related to the development of new research department, or related to the development of a new research department. These talks were, however, waylaid due to the recent cyber attack on consortium infrastructure. News in brief. Early findings from Federation inquest into Race for Hive's failure implicate Agard's administration. Caldari supply Edencom forces with Karuras for Pochfin deployments. Major conflicts between Capsuleers and Head Constellation, Lantoran and Socide, results in trillions of ISK worth of destruction. New conservation advocacy initiative within Thrus 4 launched to protect declining hanging long limb population from poachers. President Agard commends Capsuleers preparing for celebrate Federation Day on Dodixie on the 28th of June. Holoreel data chip sales on rise as retro-physical media counterculture seeks alternatives to broadcast media. Capsuleer-led Imperium announces relocation from Delve and Quirius with goals of consolidation in southeastern reaches of New Eden. And that is it for your New Eden news on June 26th, YC127. Now for some analysis. So, obviously, the Equinox structures have seen multiple setbacks since their deployment with Equinox, including the development of the mercenary dens and now this cyber attack. I do find it interesting that they say that they try to blame the Deathless Circle, which the Deathless Circle has kind of become the de facto faction to blame for all bad things happening in New Eden recently. That said, this idea of a self-replicating virus, an evolutionary algorithm, when I read this seems to me like the hallmark of Triglavian technology. You know, historically, when we've seen these self-replicating worms, they have been attached to Triglavian efforts, and this idea of like evolutionary algorithms is very similar to what Triglavians have used when it comes to like filaments and establishment of stuff. Did the Drifters do? Let's see. Let's look up self-replicating worm. Yeah, so mysterious Triglavian Galnet worm unlocks abyssal filament configurations for frigates. Yeah, that's the one I was thinking about. And I think that that's the big one. So, I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean it's associated with the Triglavians. It may be still associated with the Deathless, but also remember that the Deathless might see common allies with the Triglavians. Because and you know, the Deathless is all about making deals and forming new alliances. They both, you know, both the Deathless and the Triglavians see the Drifters as a significant threat. I'm just saying, like this. Now it's also true that the Deathless have an incredibly powerful computer system in the Warden, but I think that that's actually makes it even more interesting that this doesn't implicate the Warden in this situation. You would just think that if the Deathless was involved, they would use their ability to crack the codes and possibly even infect through the mercenary dens. That would be more direct as a way of doing it. I feel like the DED and Consortium are potentially covering up for their own failure and using the Deathless as a scapegoat. But like I said, this idea of a self-replicating worm definitely reflects more of a Triglavian strategy than anything else. Now, this Drifter wormhole occupiers, this is very related to the Drifter Summit, which happened at FanFest, where the Mimitar and Edencom were about sharing the materials with everyone. But the Triglavian Collective in particular, those who supported the Triglavian Collective, were against this policy of free sharing the materials. So while I think this is interesting, we're still just kind of tiptoeing towards the next development with this stuff, right? We don't know where the Drifter tech is going. We don't know where these new devices are going. Although when they were active, remember, there was a wormhole that did seem to lead to Jovian space in at the tip of each of those towers. So that's worth looking at. But we're going to have to keep a close eye on these factions and what they are developing. We also have seen some notes about their research and development projects in previous New Eden news. Yeah. But in the news in brief, we do have, so we're seeing a blame on the Agard administration. Remember, there was supposed to be an election within the Federation 4 months ago. And the election was delayed due to the Drifter attacks. But now the Drifter attacks are over, but Agard is remaining on high alert. So, you know, the Agard administration, President Agard, is at a historically very weak position politically. And this doesn't help anything. So I do find, especially with like Federation Day coming up, which in the time of this recording is tomorrow, and there is going to be an in-game event in Dodixie during that time, I wonder if there's something going to happen. And more importantly, we absolutely need to have an election if we continue want to keep calling the Federation a democracy. So, next we see the Caldari supply Edencom forces with Karuras. This is related to the fact that there is a balance change in Pochvin where Phoenixes use missiles. They're a missile-based dread. There's a site in Pochvin where you have to fight an Edencom dread, and it's based on one of the 4 races, obviously. But the problem is that 3 of the 4 races use turrets, and 1 of the races use missiles. And it was difficult to balance between those 2 and make them realistic. So they're switching the Caldari one over to the Karura to make it so that all 4 races are using a turret. So that makes them more straightforward for how they operate. Major conflicts between Capsuleers and Head Constellation. There has been significant, there's been scope news about this. There's been some pretty significant dread brawls in Lowsec recently, which have been pretty cool. I don't have any idea what this one is. We might want to look up this one. Here we go. Tharus 4 is almost entirely covered by inhospitable marshy jungles, and the methane-filled atmosphere is unbreathable by humans. It is the home of the long-limb family of species, including the hanging long-limb. See also hanging long-limb. The hanging long-limb is an animal that comes from the methane-covered Galente planet. This planet's ecosystem was not changed in thousands of years and remains mostly free of human intervention. While the long-limb does have some predators, it is known to be skilled at avoiding them. It is not, however, a very intelligent animal, though it does have some problem-solving abilities. It is capable for quick movement, but does not do so unless attempting to capture food or evade a predator. And there is some chronicles involving this. This is actually pretty new to me. Oh, we've even got a picture of him. I wonder if this is going to go anywhere. It is associated with the Galente, so like all of this stuff with the election and Celis Agard and all that stuff, it could maybe play out. Yeah, as of right now, though, I'm not sure exactly where they're going. Yeah, it is kind of creepy looking, huh? But let's see. Let's go back to this. They're saying new conservatory advocacy initiative. So the population is declining. That might be something that's worth looking into later. You know, the Capsuleer Day, or sorry, not Capsuleer Day, but the Federation Day in Dodixie on the 28th. We just talked about that. Save the long limbs. Yeah, I didn't know anything about them, but now I care. It could be a target for Vanguard. Yeah, that's true. It could be another piece of like Vanguard stuff. What is the event tomorrow? Tomorrow is Federation Day. So right now there's a skin sale for Federation Day. It's stuff, but the actual like so tomorrow is the birthday of the Federation. Holoreal data chip sales on rise as retro physical media counterculture seeks alternative broadcast media. Is interesting. You know, I know Paragon created their own broadcast network, and of course Scope has been doing their thing, but yeah, I don't know. This kind of seems to represent just more of a tension between the powers that be. What does it look like in game? There's a whole firework. No. So every year they have so it's just basically going to be a player gathering with fireworks and celebration and all that sort of stuff. It's a player run event, and a skin contest, and then Imperium is on the move again. Actually, one of the most interesting things is it came to my attention that the Imperium are actually destroying their structures in 1DQ, which is amazing. That's going to have some pretty crazy repercussions. But you know, this is the biggest logistical movement in New Eden for probably the last decade or so. So, that's kind of a cool thing to pay attention to. Yeah, the Keepstar Bash is this weekend too. So there's a lot going on this weekend. If you're watching this live, if you're not, then maybe you should look into what happened. But that is it for the New Eden news for today. Or rather for June 26th, YC127. I have been Ashtarothi, the voice of New Eden. Until next time, I'll see you in space. All right. And I think that probably about wraps it up for today. We've covered some stuff with Eve Frontiers. Just a reminder, there is Eve Frontiers. It will be available for everybody for the next 10 days. Just go ahead and check it out. If you're interested in getting Frontier Founders Access, please consider using my link down below as your referral for your Founder Access. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Feed the guinea pigs and the puppy. Hi, puppy. You want to come say hi? She's like, no, I don't want to say hi. All right. But yeah, I do appreciate all of you guys for hanging out. We will be back. Keep an eye out on the Discord. If people bother me or if there's something to do, maybe we'll hop in to stream this weekend. But we will absolutely be back next week. I have some editing to do, both for this New Eden news and probably some other, like we'll do I want to edit out the segment about Plex to put it out for people, because I think that was a pretty good conversation we just had. But if you're brand new to Eve or returning or just haven't used a buddy code yet, make sure to use the link down below or in chat. If you want to come hang out with us and maximize player engagement online, use the link for the Discord. Come hang out. You don't even have to join the convocation. Just come hang out, say hi. We are on voice comms and all that stuff all the time. Just come say hi. See if you need anything, hit me up. I'll be here. But all that said, I've been Ashtarothi. I've been playing this game since 2010, talking about it since 2012, and I'm here to put even into context for you, my fellow Imperians. Thank you guys so much for coming, checking out the stream. Shoot, hold on. Sticky note. Where's my notes? I would definitely want to thank my my immortal sponsors. Except here we go. My immortal tier supporters: 745 MPSI, Ardenika the Queen, Bad Boy Smooth, Ebo Leet, Erlitus, Alanje, Flash Gordon, May, Malik Starfire, Malin, Mercuton, Nihilum, LM1, Sheesh, and Rid. And I'm just going to throw in there Punchinella too. No, thank you guys all so much. And until next time, I'll see you in space.
Bring on the every city